The storm had no beginning. It was as if reality itself had chosen to remember its birth through violence. Clouds splitting along veins of fire, thunder crawling backward through time, light bleeding upward instead of down. Within that convulsion of the cosmos, two powers from worlds that should never meet collided like rival scriptures being forced into the same prayer. Lightning first, white and gold, ancient and furious, a voice that once ruled Olympus. Then shadow, violet and scarlet burning without smoke, an eye that once judged nations through pain. Zeus and Sasuke fell together through the tear between dimensions, dragged by the hunger of a warp storm so vast that even gods looked small within its throat. When they struck the surface of the dead shrine world, the impact did not make a sound. The atmosphere had been stolen long ago by war and heresy. Dust rose in silent avalanches. Statues of the emperor cracked open from the force, their stone halos shattering into dust that glowed faintly under alien lightning. Zeus was the first to move. Sparks danced across his skin, forming brief constellations that remembered Olympus. He stood among wrecked basilicas and broken tanks, staring at the black sun above. "This is no realm of mine," he growled, the echo trembling through metal and bone alike. "Yet I smell worship and fear. Who dares steal the thunder?" "From the ruins," a whisper answered, a chakra pulse flickering between rubble, a single eye glowing like a dying star. Sasuke emerged, cloak torn, armor half melted by his own defense. He said nothing at first, only surveyed the titan before him with the weary contempt of one who had already buried gods. "You don't belong here either." Zeus turned, eyes like twin suns. "Another pretender? Speak your name before the storm forgets you." "Sasuke Uchiha," came the calm reply. "And I don't bow to storms." For a heartbeat, the world remembered what power felt like. Thunder struck sideways. Amaterasu ignited in return. Black fire met divine lightning. Two histories colliding, myth and modern sin intertwining. The shockwave erased the nearest mountains and rewrote the sky into a mural of gold and violet flame. When the smoke cleared, both still stood. Zeus's armor of light flickered but held. Sasuke's Susanoo shimmered in fragments around him. Between them, the ground had liquefied into glass. "You wield the fire of judgment," Zeus said, curiosity threading his wrath. "But it carries no faith, only grief. It burns what deserves to be gone," Sasuke answered. "Faith never stopped a monster. Their standoff ended not by choice, but by intrusion." From the horizon came a sound like metal praying, mechanical chanting layered with screams. Through the ash marched warriors in crimson armor, etched with crawling runes, word-bearers, chaos space marines. They saw two luminous figures and mistook them for rival demons. "Offerings to the Pantheon," one roared. Bolters rose, mouths of guns chanting their own gospel. The first volley streaked across the plain. Bolter shells detonated against invisible barriers of lightning and chakra. Zeus raised one hand. Thunder rolled outward in a perfect sphere, vaporizing half the squad. Sasuke vanished in the same instant, reappearing behind the others, his blade of black fire cutting through ceramite as if it were parchment soaked in guilt. When silence returned, only molten armor and drifting prayers remained. Zeus watched the mortal corpses burn. "They fight for gods unworthy of worship," Sasuke wiped blood from his cheek. "And yet they believed enough to die. That's power where I'm from. Belief is submission." Zeus's voice hardened. "Only a fool kneels to what he could strike down." "Then maybe you're still kneeling," Sasuke said, "to your own pride. The sky answered before Zeus could. The clouds above them pulsed once, twice, then tore apart as something vast pushed through. The warp had noticed. From the wound in heaven descended wings of liquid glass, eyes without faces, the smell of every sin ever whispered, a demon host. Both warriors turned toward the storm. For the first time, they shared the same stance. Zeus lifted his spear, lightning condensing along its length until it hummed like a planet-sized heartbeat. Sasuke's eye flared, the Rinnegan unfolding patterns of gravity and void. Between thunder and silence they moved. Chains of lightning met orbits of black flame. Demons screamed as time folded around them, bodies stretched across seconds, souls inverted. The ground split open. Rivers of warp energy fountained skyward. Zeus struck downward, pinning the largest creature through 6 realities at once. Sasuke followed, sealing the wound with a pattern drawn from his own blood. When it ended, rain fell. If the oily fluid descending from the sky could still be called rain. It hissed on divine skin, melted through stone, and left behind whispers that sounded almost like prayers. Zeus knelt beside a fallen statue, tracing the symbol carved into its chest, the double-headed eagle of the Imperium. Mortals still pray, even here. To what god? Sasuke studied the symbol too. To one that needs soldiers, not souls. Thunder rumbled somewhere deep in Zeus's chest. Then perhaps this world has forgotten the meaning of divinity. Or maybe it finally learned it, Sasuke said. Neither spoke for a while. The ruined city flickered under strange auroras, half alive, half remembered. In the distance, vox horns carried the metallic liturgy of survivors, pleading for deliverance that would not come. Then faintly, an explosion of psionic light from the northern horizon, followed by a voice that was not sound but belief given form. The ascension begins anew. Both turned. Beyond the mountains, a cathedral of impossible scale rose, its spires built from bones, its bells ringing inside every mind. The shrine of ascension had awakened. Zeus's grip tightened on his spear. A challenge. Sasuke's eye narrowed, Sharingan tracking the energy spirals twisting above the structure. A curse. They began walking side by side into the storm. Behind them, the dead world stirred, its dust lifting like incense toward 2 silhouettes, framed in lightning and flame. The fallen god and the cursed man, marching together toward a place where faith itself would burn. Ash fell like snow over the plain, drifting in patterns that seemed almost deliberate, sigils written by the wind. Every flake that touched the ground hissed, burning tiny circles into the glassed earth. Ahead, the horizon pulsed with a heartbeat of lightning and chant. The shrine of ascension loomed larger with each step, a mountain of bone and black iron rising from the wasteland, its towers crowned with living fire that screamed in harmony with the thunder. Zeus walked as if the world still bowed to him. Each footstep cracked the ground, sparks blooming beneath his heels. He carried no weapon now. His spear had dissolved into stormlight, circling him as a crown of orbiting blades. Beside him, Sasuke moved soundlessly, cloak drawn tight, his single Rinnegan eye studying every vibration in the air. Where Zeus radiated divinity like a furnace, Sasuke was absence, a silence so dense that even the ash hesitated to touch him. "Do you hear them?" Zeus asked, voice rolling across the plain. "They pray to something that answers. I hear only fear," Sasuke replied. "And fear always finds a god." They climbed the final ridge before the shrine. From this height they saw the valley below, a sea of worshippers, thousands of cultists kneeling before the cathedral's gates. Their bodies were painted in blood and oil, their chants layered in 8 dialects of the same madness. Massive banners of flayed skin fluttered in winds that did not exist. At the center, an altar built from the hull of a crashed battleship bled molten gold into carved runes. The ritual had already begun. Zeus's gaze hardened. They defile the language of sacrifice. They bleed for nothing. Sasuke's voice was low. No, they bleed for meaning. The god turned toward him, eyes narrowing. You defend them. I understand them. Sasuke's expression was unreadable. A man who has lost everything will invent a god to blame, or to love, makes no difference. Zeus's thunderclouds gathered around his shoulders, a mantle of storm. Then you've learned nothing. Worship breeds weakness. Sasuke looked at him for a long time, the ash swirling between them like falling years. You sound exactly like the men who burned my village. For the first time, Zeus did not answer. The wind took the silence and stretched it thin until the sound of drums below broke it apart. Cultists were lowering prisoners, imperial civilians, onto the altar, binding them with wires that pulsed in rhythm with the chanting. Above the altar, suspended by chains of light, a dark apostle raised a tome written in his own skin. The veil will part, he intoned. The false heavens shall open, and our true God shall breathe upon us. Zeus's fury rippled through the atmosphere. Their god shall taste thunder. He stepped forward, but Sasuke's hand shot out, stopping him. Wait. If you strike now, the ritual detonates. They've woven life and death together. You break one, the other erupts. Then how do we end it? Zeus's tone was sharp, impatient. Sasuke studied the runes through his rinnegan. There's a focus point inside the cathedral, something anchoring the warp energy. If we sever it first, the rest collapses. Zeus's smile was like dawn seen through fire. Then we carve our way in. He leapt from the ridge before Sasuke could protest. The storm followed him, bolts cascading from the sky, each strike obliterating a line of cultists. Sasuke cursed under his breath, then vanished into lightning shadow, reappearing at the base of the altar just as Zeus landed. The dark apostle turned, his voice a blend of iron and ecstasy. Behold, the false idols come to contest the ascension. Their defiance shall sanctify us. He gestured, and the crowd answered. Thousands screamed as the runes beneath their feet ignited, transforming flesh to fire. Souls spiraled upward like sparks into the air, feeding the expanding portal above the altar. The shrine trembled, its spires bending as if in supplication to the growing wound in reality. Zeus roared, hurling his storm crown into the portal. Lightning tore through the sky, momentarily halting the expansion, but the power of the ritual absorbed the strike, turning blue fire into violet corruption. Sasuke's voice cut through the chaos. You're feeding it! Zeus's eyes widened a fraction. Then we starve it. Sasuke moved first. His blade, wreathed in amaterasu, sliced through the air, severing the ritual chains that held the prisoners. Each break sent shockwaves through the pattern, destabilizing the flow. The cultists screamed, some collapsing as the energy backlashed through their minds. Zeus followed, summoning the lightning back into his hand, compressing it into a single sphere, no larger than a heart. He hurled it into the altar. The explosion was silent but total. When the light faded, the valley was gone. Only molten rock and drifting ghosts remained. At the center stood Zeus and Sasuke, steam rising from their forms. Sasuke exhaled, voice tight. You nearly killed every soul on this world. They were already dead, Zeus answered. They chose it. They chose to believe, not to burn. Belief made them fuel. Sasuke turned away, jaw tightening. And arrogance makes you blind. Zeus's response was cut short by a tremor. The ground beneath them cracked open, revealing not stone but veins of light, red, gold, and void black, pulsing like arteries beneath skin. The remains of the altar twisted, reforming into something alive. From the molten heart of the crater rose a figure, enormous, luminous, terrible. Its surface mirrored everything around it: Zeus's storm, Sasuke's flame, the dead sky. Whatever one saw in it, it reflected, magnified, and perverted. The mirror god had awakened. Its voice was a choir of echoes, every tone a contradiction. Two reflections lost between worlds. The thunder that fears silence. The eye that worships its own sorrow. Zeus leveled his gaze. You are no god. I am every god, the creature replied, for I am what they see when they pray. Sasuke's Sharingan flared. Then let's show you what prayer costs. They attacked together, storm and shadow intertwined. Zeus's lightning became a net of radiant serpents striking from every angle. Sasuke's fire followed, black tongues wrapping around each bolt, turning white into violet. The mirror god absorbed both, ripples of their own power flashing back at them, distorted. Sasuke staggered as his own Amaterasu lashed toward him. Zeus caught the stray lightning with his bare hand, forcing it to obey. It copies us. No, Sasuke gritted. It judges us. The reflection on the god's surface shifted. Zeus saw himself enthroned upon Olympus, hurling thunder at pleading mortals. Sasuke saw Itachi dying again under his blade. The creature fed on guilt, reshaping itself with their sins. Zeus struck harder, but every blow rebounded. Sasuke tried sealing techniques, but each rune he drew appeared mirrored, reversed, turned back upon him. Then we changed the reflection, Zeus growled. How? Sasuke demanded. By remembering the truth. Zeus slammed his fist into the ground. The thunder cracked the glassed plain, exposing the bones of the planet's crust. He drew the storm downward, through himself, through the wounds of the earth. Lightning has no mirror, he shouted. It strikes and vanishes. He hurled that understanding forward, a raw surge of will rather than light. The mirror god faltered, its perfect surface fractured. Sasuke saw the opening and leapt, channeling every fragment of his chakra, his pain, his loss. Then neither does vengeance, he screamed, driving his blade into the fracture. For an instant, the world inverted. The shrine collapsed inward, the valley folding like paper, time flowing in reverse. The mirror god's form imploded into a single point of light and was gone. Silence fell, a silence deeper than before, the kind that waits to see what survives. Zeus knelt amid the ruins, chest heaving, eyes dimmed to ember. Sasuke stood beside him, the Rinnegan flickering weakly. Around them, the sky was torn open, revealing a glimpse of the warp beyond. A sea of eyes watching, calculating, hungry. It's not over, Sasuke whispered. No, Zeus agreed, rising slowly. That was only its shadow. In the distance, the surviving towers of the shrine began to move. Not fall. Move. Bending like living things, reshaping into a colossal archway. Through it, reality itself seemed to drip, forming the outline of another being descending from the warp. Zeus turned to Sasuke, voice quiet. but carrying the weight of thunder held in check. You sought redemption. And you sought dominion, Sasuke answered. Then together, Zeus said, lifting his spear reborn from lightning, we'll find judgment. Sasuke nodded once. His single eye glowed, not with hatred now, but with something older, resolve. Let's end their heaven. They walked toward the archway as the warp wind screamed around them, carrying fragments of broken prayers and dying stars. And above, unseen, the cosmos took note. Two figures, one born of myth, one forged of sin, standing against a universe that had forgotten the difference between gods and monsters. The archway loomed before them, a gate forged not of matter but of memory. Every stone was a thought once whispered in terror, every joint sealed with the tears of believers who had prayed for a savior and received only silence. Now that silence was breaking. The air thickened. The horizon curved inward, as though the planet itself bowed beneath a new gravity. Within the arch's heart, darkness churned like ink spilled into water, then solidified into form. Arms, wings, faces, shifting without pattern. 1,000 prayers trying to wear the same body. Zeus felt the pull first. Each particle of lightning in his blood turned toward the gate, begging to be absorbed. He clenched his fists until sparks bled from his palms. This thing steals divinity, he muttered. It drinks the storm. Beside him, Sasuke's eyes spiraled open. Rinnegan lines flared across the ground, mapping the energy flow like veins under translucent skin. It's not just stealing, he said. It's learning. As they watched, the shape inside the portal began to resemble them. A crown of thunder around a skull of fire, a single eye burning violet in the forehead. Lightning and chakra fused into an impossible reflection. Atheon, the mirror god reborn, now self-aware. When it spoke, the valley trembled. I am the sum of all belief. You gave me form, Storm Lord. You gave me purpose, fallen shinobi. You fought the mirror, and so the mirror became you. Sasuke's jaw tightened. You were destroyed. I was purified, Atheon corrected, its tone almost gentle. You freed me from reflection. Now I am will. Zeus raised his spear, eyes igniting. Then will meets will. He hurled the weapon. It became a lance of condensed lightning, bright enough to carve after images into the clouds. Atheon caught it between two fingers. The impact split mountains, but the creature did not flinch. Your thunder was born of mortal faith, it said, and faith is mine. The spear crumbled into motes of gold that re-entered Zeus's chest like betrayal made visible. He staggered. Sasuke darted forward, chakra flaring into blue flame, launching a barrage of shuriken formed from compressed gravity. They vanished into Atheon's body, swallowed whole. Then came the backlash. Every weapon turned against them. Zeus's lightning, Sasuke's gravity, the very ashes underfoot, folding inward towards the gate, feeding the newborn god. The air became a choir of screams. From the distant ruins of the shrine, surviving cultists rose again, their flesh knitted by warp energy, eyes hollow but radiant. Atheon's voice filled them. Kneel and be remade. They obeyed. Where their knees touched the ground, spires of living flesh erupted, linking earth to heaven, creating a lattice that pulsed with warp light. Atheon was building a throne, using the planet as scaffold. Zeus fought to rise against the pull, every muscle singing with thunder. Sasuke stood beside him, cloak snapping in the updraft of divine power. "We can't win here," Sasuke said. "We don't leave battlefields unfinished," Zeus growled. "This isn't a battlefield," Sasuke shot back. "It's a birth, and births have hearts." The god glanced at him, the storm behind his eyes flickering with reluctant curiosity. "Explain." Sasuke pointed to the arch's center, where the black core pulsed in time with their breathing. "That rhythm, it matches the resonance of our powers. It's imitating us. If we break synchronization, it collapses." "You mean disagreement as weapon?" A bitter smile curved Zeus's mouth. "For once, mortal wisdom amuses me." He spread his arms, drawing lightning from the storm above. Sasuke stepped away, forming seals with blinding speed. Together they unleashed chaos, but not in harmony, out of phase. Zeus's bolts struck milliseconds apart from Sasuke's flames. Frequencies clashed, canceling patterns the creature tried to mirror. The gate's symmetry began to fracture. Atheon screamed, not in pain but confusion. "You divide yourselves? Why?" "Because truth," Zeus thundered, "is not unity. Because guilt," Sasuke whispered, "can't be shared." The warp storm writhed overhead, unable to decide whose law to follow. For a heartbeat, the entire sky flickered between Olympus blue and shinobi violet. Then the arch cracked. A column of raw energy blasted outward, throwing both combatants miles away. They landed on the edge of a canyon carved by the explosion, the shrine now half submerged in molten stone. Between the lightning flashes, they saw Atheon staggering within the collapsing gate, trying to hold its newborn shape together. "It's weakening," Sasuke shouted. "Then we finish it!" Zeus drew the storm back into himself, becoming a silhouette of pure radiance. Sasuke summoned the last vestige of Susanoo, a skeletal colossus formed of memory and regret. Together they charged, twin comets descending upon a god not yet complete. Atheon raised its hands, catching the blows with reality itself. The impact rippled across the planet. Oceans boiled, clouds burned. Lightning wrapped around black flame, forming a spiral that reached into orbit. Within that storm, the three powers merged, indistinguishable. Thunder, flame, and reflection spinning into a single column of creation. The sound was not heard but felt, resonating in the bones of every creature still alive. When the light finally died, only the arch remained, shattered but still standing, its center dark and silent. Atheon was gone, or hiding. Zeus fell to one knee, steam rising from his skin. Sasuke's armor was half ash, his breath ragged. They looked at each other, exhaustion mirrored, pride unspoken. Then the ground shook again. From beneath the planet's crust came a deeper pulse, slow and measured, like a sleeping titan turning in its bed. The arch's fragments began to rise, orbiting the empty space where Atheon had stood. Sasuke's eye widened. "It's not over." "No," Zeus said, voice barely a whisper. "It's only grown hungrier." Far above them, in orbit, the debris of ancient warships drifted together, pulled by an invisible hand into the shape of a sigil. Lightning crawled across the void, connecting the shipwrecks into one colossal circuit. The newborn god was moving its consciousness into the heavens. Zeus rose again, shoulders squared. "Then we follow." Sasuke turned his gaze skyward, Sharingan burning through the storm. "I hope the stars are ready to burn." They leapt, Zeus transforming into a spear of light, Sasuke vanishing in a whirl of black fire. The sky swallowed them both, leaving the ruined world trembling in their wake. The climb into the void felt like drowning upward. Atmosphere tore at them in sheets, burning against Zeus's incandescent form, shredding around Sasuke's vortex of shadow. Beyond the last whisper of wind, silence unfolded, immense, predatory, holy in the way a blade is holy. Orbit was a graveyard. Hulks of ancient cruisers drifted like cathedral bones, their ribs open to the stars. Imperial Aquilus lay split across broken prows. Demon-etched gun decks yawned like mouths mid-hymn. The debris had not been still in centuries until now. The wreckage flowed with intent, assembling along invisible geometries into an immense ring that circled the planet like a crown of thorns. Within the ring, lightning crawled not in random veins, but in script, pulses of energy resolving into letters too old to belong to men. The ring began to spin, dragging starlight into a halo. Sasuke appeared upon the flank of a shattered battleship, boots striking rusted deck with no sound. He looked down through the yawning gash of the hangar. Inside, corridors flickered to life one by one, as if the ship remembered being alive and resented it. "It's using the machine's spirits," he said, voice tight over the link that did not exist, yet existed all the same. Rewriting them. Zeus strode along the ship's spine, gravity bending to indulge him. Spirits are easily persuaded when they are lonely. He reached the broken prow and thrust his hand into the vacuum. Lightning spilled from his fist, trailing outward until it touched the ring. The entire crown shuddered in response, then accepted the power as if it had been waiting. "That power is yours," Sasuke warned. "It is thunder," Zeus replied, eyes narrowing. "It belongs to no one. It is the truth between cloud and earth." The ring accelerated. A skin began to form over its inner face, threads of biometal stretching from wreck to wreck, weaving a membrane alive with stars caught like flies. Faces bloomed beneath the surface, pressing outward, mouths open in silent hosannas. Atheon was building a heaven of flesh. Lights woke in the dark, engines flaring, vox masts unfurling like thorned flowers. Imperial signatures flickered on across the field as dormant beacons re-sang their names. Farther out, something newer responded, an active cruiser, battered but alive, rotated to present broadsides. Sigils of the ecclesiarchy glowed along its hull. A channel opened, raw and ungentle. Unidentified entities. A woman's voice cut through the void, metal-laced and unafraid. "This is Canoness Commander Mariette of the Sanctifier. By authority of the ecclesiarchy and the Ordo Hereticus liaison aboard, stand down and identify." Zeus regarded the distant ship, a cold star in his gaze. "They pray to a throne of gold and fire. They fought beneath it and bled for it," Sasuke answered, eyes never leaving the spinning ring. "And right now, they are not our enemy." "Unknown entities," the canoness repeated, voice sharper. "We are detecting unacceptable energy transfer into the grave ring. Cease at once or be treated as hostile." "Warn them," Sasuke said. Zeus turned his head slightly, as if finding the frequency by disdain alone. When he spoke, the vox lines groaned under the weight of his oath. "Withdraw, mortal vessel. Your heaven is being stolen," Static hissed. The canoness's reply arrived a beat later, reverent and furious at once. "Then we reclaim it by fire." Engines bloomed. The Sanctifier advanced, launch bays opening like mouths of prayer. Swarms of gunships spilled into the dark, contrails bright against cold stars. Their target was obvious, the webbing membrane knitting the ring's interior. Sasuke saw it first. the subtle ripples in the membrane as the gunships approached, a predator's patience beneath silk. "Trap," he said, and his body was already moving. He flickered through space, reappearing at the lead of the swarm, arms cutting seals that were never meant to be seen in a vacuum. Gravity bent around his hands. The membrane struck an instant later, tendrils of translucent flesh lashing out in a lattice too fast for engines to evade. Ships snagged, pilots screamed, machine spirits howled psalms of pain. Sasuke's seals closed. The lattice kinked, momentum misdirected, tendrils slicing past hulls by breaths. Several craft still caught, thrashing like insects, but most broke free. Zeus entered the slaughter as thunder wearing a man's shape. He seized the nearest tendril with both hands and tore, lightning running along its length until it shattered into a bouquet of stardust. The ring convulsed. Faces beneath its skin turned toward Zeus, thousands, millions, and spoke with one voice. In a tongue that made comets hesitate, "Father." Zeus froze. The word was not worship, it was accusation. An old wound reopened across a universe not his. He bared his teeth. "I am no one's father here," Atheon answered from everywhere at once. "The hand that throws thunder is always a father's hand." "You mistake dominion for blood," Zeus snarled, and ripped another vein from the membrane. The stars beyond lit in rags of flame. On the sanctifier, alarms painted the bridge in red. Canoness. Mariette braced against the command pedestal as the ship bucked under invisible tides. The confessor beside her clutched his Crozius, murmuring a litany. A skull-faced inquisitor watched in bitter silence, lenses bright with analysis. "Report," Mariette snapped. "Machine spirits are agitated, my lady," the tech priest rasped, vox clicking. "An unrecognized metadominion seeks to overwrite their doctrinal cores. The ring is broadcasting a catechism in," he faltered, voice glitching, "in a language our souls remember, but our minds do not. Target the central nexus," the Inquisitor said, "where the script is brightest." "And the entities?" Mariette asked. The Inquisitor's lenses narrowed as he studied the god of thunder cleaving space, and the one-eyed shadow bending gravity like thread. "Unknown, but they are slaying the same beast we are." A beat. "For now. Then we accept their heresy until it is no longer useful," Mariette said, grim. "All batteries, fire for the Emperor's silence." The sanctifier vomited light, macro cannon shells and lances carving through the ring's auto-ripening flesh. Holes blew outward. The membrane screamed, an audioless wail that made teeth ache. Atheon reacted, redirecting power. The star-facing side of the ring opened like an eye. From its pupil, a harrow of black spears launched, self-propelled, guided by belief rather than code. Sasuke was already there. His Sharingan tracked the spear's micro-twists, saw intentions unfold before metal moved. He folded space, placing himself between the swarm and the ship. Hands cut through emptiness, seals bloomed. The spears curved toward him as if invited. He let them come to within whisper's distance, and then erased their momentum, dropping them into stillness like forgotten thoughts. Hundreds hung motionless, points kissing the visor of his mask. "Go back," he whispered. He rotated his wrists. Space obliged. The spears reversed, accelerating along their birth paths, punching back into the ring with precise hatred. The membrane convulsed, birthing shockwaves that sent broken stations tumbling. Zeus dived through the chaos towards the hub, a nucleus where the ring's scripts knotted into a single glyph. As he approached, the glyph spoke. A chorus of voices he had crushed across eons. A roll call of fallen suns and cities. The storm inside him faltered. Atheon manifested before him, not as a titan now, but as a boy of impossible beauty. Eyes wide with wounded awe, hair crackling with stolen lightning. "Why did you leave?" Zeus's hand shook. He remembered a cradle carved from cloud. He remembered a prophecy he had broken with fire. He remembered he crushed the memory with will. "I did not leave," he said quietly. "I burned the road." The boy smiled, and all his teeth were altars. "Then come home, father." Lightning gathered, first slow, then all at once. Zeus became a sun split open, a wound in day. He struck. The boy shattered into a storm of mirrors. Each reflected Zeus as a different tyrant, Olympus king, warlord, judge, executioner. Each shard bled prayers. The prayers tried to enter him. Sasuke's voice cut across the void, steady, human. "Zeus!" The god turned, thunder snarling like a cornered hound. "Believe me," Sasuke said, "not them." It was such a small request. And yet the universe pivoted on its hinge. Zeus closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were not suns but storms again, less bright and more true. He seized the mirror storm with both hands and broke it, not in rage this time, but in judgment. The shards became dust. The dust tried to be prayer. He would not let it. "Your father is the hunger that made you," Zeus told Atheon, voice iron. "I am only thunder, and thunder does not raise children." The hub glyph flared in fury. The entire ring coiled like a serpent about to strike. "Now," Sasuke murmured. He threw his last reserve into a single seal, one he had vowed never to use. Space beneath the hub kinked inward. A localized singularity birthed in the ring's throat. The glyph spasmed, half swallowed by its own gravity. Zeus dove. He drove his spear through the glyph and into the heart of the singularity. Lightning bellowed. The ring screamed. The heaven of flesh tore along its seams, faces peeling away like saints from ruined frescoes. On the sanctifier, the bridge crew watched the crown unmake itself. Hope tasted like blood. The Inquisitor bowed his head, not in prayer, but in calculation recalibrated by awe. "Maintain distance," Mariette ordered softly, as if loudness might unbalance a miracle. "Let the heretics devour themselves." The singularity collapsed with a sigh that shook mountains. Debris blossomed outward. Membrane skin went slack, tore, and drifted as veils through space. Atheon did not die. It recoiled, a thought retreating from a flame, withdrawing its essence into a fragment the size of a man. It fell, trailing tatters of belief like meteors shed light. Sasuke watched it streak towards the planet. "It's going to ground." Zeus rolled his shoulders, spent but unbowed. "Then so do we." He turned to the sanctifier, raised a hand in acknowledgement. A god gives an army that has not failed. The canoness's reply was a single, stiff nod. Reverence tempered by the promise of later questions. They fell together, two burning shapes, descending toward the world that had called them, toward the cathedral of ash, where a god would attempt to be born a third time. Below, the dead shrine lit anew, like a candle relit by stubborn hands. The planet itself seemed to wait, breath held, ready to decide whether to believe again, or to finally learn how to live without gods. They hit the atmosphere like meteors that refused to die. Air screamed around them. white fire peeling away in spirals that became storm clouds. Below, the desecrated shrine world spread out like an open wound. Cathedrals collapsed into canyons, rivers of glass reflecting the twin streaks descending from orbit. Athion's fragment fell ahead of them, a comet of black light punching through the crust and vanishing into the mantle. Zeus landed first, carving a crater that smoked with ozone and molten stone. He rose through the glare, skin alive with crawling bolts. Sasuke materialized beside him, cloak in tatters, eyes burning through the dust. "Deep," Sasuke said. "It burrowed under the shrine." Zeus turned toward the horizon. The once ruined Basilica Imperialis now pulsed like a heart. Towers rebuilt themselves from bone and scrap. Choirs of the dead sang in reverse. "It chooses holy ground," the god murmured. "All parasites do." They moved. The ground itself opposed them, slag hardening into statues that clawed upward, chanting in tongues that had no sound. Zeus's stride shattered them. Sasuke's shadow erased their echoes. Each step brought them closer to the resurrected city where faith had turned carnivorous. At the gates of the basilica, a figure waited. Canoness Mariette, her armor scorched from the orbital battle. Around her stood the surviving sisters of the Sanctifier, weapons trembling between awe and blasphemy. When she saw the two beings walking through fire, she lowered her bolter. "You returned." Her voice wavered between gratitude and dread. Sasuke stopped. "The thing you fought isn't dead." Mariette's visor reflected his single spinning eye. "We felt it," the saints whispered, the ground dreams of resurrection. Behind her, the basilica's doors groaned open by themselves. A wind of ash spilled out, carrying whispers that sounded like prayers recited backward. Zeus stepped past the canoness without permission. Inside, the cathedral had grown. Columns stretched beyond sight, constellations painted on ceilings that changed when watched. Every surface throbbed with heartbeat light. Atheon was using the structure as cocoon. At the altar center stood a column of black crystal, the god's chrysalis. Within, shifting silhouettes formed and dissolved. Zeus's face, Sasuke's eye, Mariette's prayers, the emperor's silent corpse. All stolen, none true. Sasuke approached, hand outstretched, feeling the chakra bleed from his fingertips as the crystal drank it. "It's feeding on identity," he said quietly. "Every belief, every memory, every name." Zeus's reply was thunder low and bitter. "Then it will choke." He raised his spear, lightning circling like vultures. The canoness lifted a hand. "Wait," she cried. "If it dies here, the warp wound may open again. We'll lose the world." Sasuke's gaze flicked to her. "You'd rather let it live?" "I would rather it end where faith can contain it," she said, "within sanctity." "Sanctity built this," Zeus growled, gesturing at the living walls. "You worshipped until your prayers found a throat." Mariette stood her ground. "Then we seal the throat, not with fire, but with purpose." For a heartbeat, silence balanced them all. The god, the shinobi, the soldier of faith. 3 faiths, 3 heresies, 1 wound. Then the crystal split. Light poured out, not radiant but remembering. It showed each of them the moment they had first believed in something greater, and the moment that belief had died. For Zeus, the birth of his throne. For Sasuke, his brother's final breath. For Mariette, the first time a prayer went unanswered. The memories merged, forming a single towering figure of light and grief. Atheon reborn stepped forward. neither man nor God, but agreement made flesh. You cannot destroy what you share, it said softly. You are my trinity. Sasuke's hand went to his sword. Then break the trinity. Zeus answered with action. Thunder tore through stained glass like cannon fire. Atheon caught the blast, turned it into roses of plasma that fell as ash. Every strike feeds me, it murmured. Violence is worship. Sasuke vanished, reappearing behind the entity, blade slicing through its spine. The cut healed instantly, sealing with his own chakra. Pain bit into his palm. His weapon was bleeding. It's using us as ink, he hissed. Mariette dropped to her knees, chanting litanies, stripped of words. Her armor glowed, sigils burning with gold fire. The cathedral responded, its foundations trembling in harmony. Faith is not yours, she cried. It is command. Atheon turned its gaze upon her. All commands are prayers. The walls peeled back, revealing sky. Not the real one, the memory of a sky stitched from every heaven mortals had ever imagined. Stars shaped like saints, clouds made of faces. Lightning rained upward. Zeus closed his eyes. Enough. He lowered his spear until it touched the floor, letting the lightning seep into the stone. The cathedral shuddered. You want faith? He said, voice quiet now. Then carry the burden of it. Sasuke understood. He stepped beside the god, chakra flaring dark and cold. Mariette kept praying, her voice cracking but steady. The three currents met, divinity, defiance, devotion, spiraling upward into the heart of Atheon. The entity screamed. Its body fractured into mirrors again, but these no longer reflected. They absorbed. Every belief, every lie, every name it had stolen flooded back into those who had lost them. Zeus felt Olympus again and forgave its fall. Sasuke saw his brother smile without blood. Mariette heard the emperor's silence and found peace in it. The light collapsed inward, leaving behind only the column of black crystal, now inert, dull as cooled glass. The basilica stood empty, silent except for the crackle of fading thunder. Sasuke lowered his head, breath uneven. Is it over? Zeus studied the remains. Nothing that learns ever dies. It waits. Mariette rose slowly, weapon slack in her grip. Then we will wait with it, guard it, pray, not to it, but against it. The god regarded her for a long moment. That, he said, is the first honest prayer I've heard in this universe. Outside, dawn bled across the horizon, gray, reluctant, but real. The storm withdrew into higher air, leaving the scent of rain instead of ozone. Sasuke stepped into the light. Where will you go, Sush? He asked. Zeus looked toward the stars, where wreckage still glowed like embers. Wherever thunder is disobedient. And me? Sasuke said. The god smiled faintly. You carry storms in your blood. The universe will find you. He began to walk, each step a diminishing echo of power. Sasuke watched until the figure was a spark on the horizon, then turned back toward the canoness and the silent crystal. Do you believe it's truly gone? She asked. He looked at the crystal. Deep inside, something faintly pulsed, neither divine nor mortal, but waiting. No, Sasuke said, and neither am I. Weeks wore a new face across the shrine world, a face stitched from ash and hymns. The Basilica Imperialis, once a wound screaming into the sky, now stood in stern quiet, its flayed banners replaced with cloth, dyed in the modest grays of contrition. Purge fires had burned through the underhives until stone sweated absolution. The living returned like hesitant birds, building shelters in the shadows of broken saints, learning to breathe again in a world where silence did not always mean doom. Canoness? Mariette walked the length of the nave at dawn each day, her sabatons echoing through halls that had learned to fear thunder. She paused before the black crystal sealed behind an adamantine lattice and 6 concentric rings of consecrated sigils. Servitors bled incense. Confessors took shifts, reciting scripture not to the crystal but against it. They did not pray for mercy. They prayed for discipline. "Report," she said. The tech priest attached to the watch detail crackled like a damaged hymn. No measurable energy discharge in the last 40 hours. However, the chronometers inside the cell report a variance of 0.02 seconds per hour relative to exterior time. The object appears to be rehearsing. Mariette felt the words anchor inside her like sinking iron. Rehearsing what? The tech priest's optics rotated a gesture that passed for helplessness. Whatever it intends to be next, through the bars, she studied the crystal's dull face. It reflected nothing. It remembered everything. Elsewhere beneath the city, Sasuke moved through corridors mapped by grief. His cloak was ash again despite his efforts. Dust loved him the way truth loves a wound. He walked with a squad of sisters drawn from the Sanctifier's veterans, their bolters held with that peculiar mix of reverence and hatred, the faithful reserve for tools that had saved them often enough to become intimate. They hunted whispers in the catacombs, where martyr bones were stacked like quiet thunderheads. The walls had begun to breathe. Faces formed and subsided in the efflorescent fungi. When the sisters lit them with lamps, the faces looked away like shamed children. The air tasted faintly of honey, a saccharine sweetness that did not belong in tombs. At a T-junction, where a saint's femur served as a signpost, a sister made the error of speaking a prayer. The ceiling peeled. From between seams in the stone, hands ungrew, mirror pale, nailless, 3 too many knuckles each. They clapped in unison. The sound was a child's delight. "Contact," a sister breathed. "Hold," Sasuke said, voice low and flat. "We don't feed it." The hands reached toward the sound of his authority, questing, curious. He slid forward, Sharingan narrowing, Rinnegan's emptiness shimmering and fading like memory of rain. He did not strike. He looked not at the hands, but at what cast them. The wall's shadow did not match the lanterns. It matched breath. Sasuke exhaled as if blowing dust from an old blade. The shadow wavered, tried to become him, failed and fled deeper. He followed. The sisters came behind, their boots learning to make less noise than guilt. In the third crypt, they found the first zealot. He had been a heretic hours ago, caught inscribing forbidden geometry around a reliquary, executed with a clean shot through the eye. Now he knelt upright, whole unhealed but useful, the wound sprouting a lens of black glass. Tears overflowed, not saline but mercury, rolling down cheeks that did not recognize them. His mouth shaped syllables no ear should entertain. Sasuke crouched, studying the man's lips. He already knew the words. He had heard them under other skies. The thunder left a seed. The sisters tensed as one. Safety charms rattled on rosaries. Sasuke said nothing. He closed the zealot's other eye with 2 fingers, neither gentle nor cruel. And in that brief darkness, he let his own grief pass between them like a bird through a room. When he opened his hand, the zealot was only dead again. The mercury tears turned to dust. The lens shattered with a sigh. They burned the body in the corridor, then salted the ashes with powdered scripture. When they emerged under daylight, the city had grown quieter, the kind of quiet that suggests listening rather than peace. Sasuke stood at the basilica's threshold until the smoke-streaked sky stopped pretending to be kind. He found Mariette in the nave with her weary files and her iron. "It's not the god," he said. "It's what the god learned to imitate." Mariette did not ask him to simplify. She had long since understood that simple questions in this world summon complex disasters. "Is it him?" she asked instead, and did not say Zeus, where the walls might be teaching themselves to spell. Sasuke considered. He had seen lightning carve ethics into stone. He had watched a man who called himself God tear his own reflection apart. "It's a seed of him," he said at last, "not of his will, of his shape. A pattern made of thunder and command. Atheon took it. The pattern wants soil." "And we are the soil," Mariette said. "Everyone is," he replied. That night the city slept restlessly. Dreams pooled like water in low places. A confessor whispered secrets to a wall and received absolution in a child's voice. A squad of novices woke to find all their rosaries knotted into a single impossible loop that spelled out a prayer they had sworn never to speak. In the square, a statue of a nameless saint bent its stone head to listen to a beggar, and did not unbend until dawn. Sasuke did not sleep. He stood on the basilica roof and watched the stars refuse to blink. He felt the slow drift of hours against his skin and noticed when it faltered. Time hiccuped, then continued as if embarrassed. He was not alone. A shadow approached that did not disturb dust. The Inquisitor from the Sanctifier, skull-faced mask, hiding a face that had already said too much to too many emperors, stepped into the moonlight like a rumor, gaining courage. "Uchiha," the Inquisitor said. The name landed like a charge laid, not yet detonated. "We have been observing you." "I noticed," Sasuke answered without turning. "You operate with unacceptable autonomy," the Inquisitor said. "Yet acceptable results." Silence considered translating itself into violence, and then declined. "The Canoness trusts you?" The Inquisitor continued. "Trust is a currency my order spends only in famine. Consider this an investment we cannot afford." Sasuke looked at the skull mask, at the lenses reflecting starlight that might have been eyes. "You want something?" "Yes," the Inquisitor said simply. "I want your distrust of thunder." Sasuke held his gaze. "You think Zeus is the wound?" "I think Zeus is the shape a wound would choose if it wanted to be obeyed," the Inquisitor said. "If the seed in our catacombs sprouts a forest of obedience, I would rather salt the world than let it grow." Sasuke didn't argue. He did not agree. He watched a meteor scratch a thin truth across the dark, far beyond even that line, past the planetary halo where memories still gathered like frost. Zeus walked in the void. He did not stride like a conqueror now. He drifted like a verdict seeking its crime. Stars recognized him and pretended not to. Worlds felt him in their crust and tightened. He followed the thrum of a machine heart older than some faiths. Mars loomed ahead, rust-red, ringed with the fever dreams of the Adeptus Mechanicus. Forges burned like patient volcanoes. Orbital docks hung like rosaries around a metallic god. As Zeus approached, the machine psalms rose in pitch, harmonizing with a frequency no human throat could bear. It was not invitation. It was challenge disguised as awe. He came down in a furnace canyon where rivers of slag flowed past cathedrals with teeth. Tech priests gathered on balconies like carrion birds that had learned calculus. Their mechadendrites wrote invisible letters in the smoke. Designation unknown, croaked a Magos, sculpted from steel and scars. But anticipated. Zeus eyed the speaker. Anticipation is a form of prayer. Correction, the Magos replied, Cable shuddering in joy. Prediction. We predicted your waveform. The storm that left its signature across the shrine world's noosphere has replicated along our data spires. It asks to be worshipped. Zeus felt the chill of an old mistake. Do you obey what asks? We obey what compiles, said the Magos. And this compiles. It writes new hymns on old circuits. It has given our litanies teeth. He raised a servo-splayed limb towards the horizon. Behold, across the foundry plain, Titan frames slept mid-prayer. Their eyes flicked open one by one, not green, not red, but gold. In the gold swam a storm. Sparks crawled from Titan to Titan, linking them in a web of crackling syntax. They hummed the way ocean floors hum when continents think about moving. Zeus's jaw set. You built a heaven of metal. The Magos emitted a flutter that must once have been laughter. We built a platform. Heaven is an upload. Your signature will be our crown. I am no crown, Zeus said softly. I am a refusal. He raised his hand. Lightning answered. Not the hungry performative blaze of Olympus, but a stern geometry that remembered promises and kept them. It raced along gantries and stained glass data panes, through the eyes of statues that wept oil, into the spinal weaves of sleeping machines. Everywhere it touched, prayers died and commands woke. The Titans shuddered. Gold flickered to white, white to honest darkness. Several fell to their knees with the sound of mountains practicing humility. The Magos staggered, vox glitching into liturgical profanity. Blasph, he began. And then all his mechadendrites drooped like wet banners. He went very still. When he spoke again, the voice was someone else's. Father, Zeus closed his eyes. He tasted the shrine world's honey air on this iron planet, and knew Athion's seed when it tried to speak through borrowed mouths. No, he told the thing wearing a priest. Your father is hunger, I am thunder. Thunder does not claim. The Magos convulsed. From his back unfurled a mirror of gold foil, reflecting the storm not as it was, but as fear wished it to be. The reflection grew teeth. The canyon's shadows turned their heads. Zeus broke the mirror with a thought. The foil sublimed to frost. The frost fell and rang like small bells. Silence after. From 100 balconies, 1,000 eyes watched a god argue with a program wearing a ghost. The watchers were not naive. They understood. They were observing a schism. Some felt freed. Others felt robbed. In the silence, a voice climbed out of the forge smoke. Not Athion's mimicry, not a priest's cant, but the machine language itself, speaking without permission, pattern, thunder, function, denial, query. What denies thunder? Zeus answered the way weather answers crops. Stone. Stone erodes, said the code with thin patience. Thunder learns the path of least resistance. Upload continues. Across Mars, data spires chimed. On their faces, the storm's signature sketched constellations, not of stars, but of commands, mapping a kind of empire that did not require belief, only repetition. Zeus walked into the chime until it ceased to be sound and became argument. He argued with it, the way a mountain argues with a river, not to win, but to teach forgetting. When the chime broke, It fell as gentler rain, the kind that awakens iron flowers no one sees. Back on the shrine world, midnight cut the city into obedient halves. Sasuke returned to the nave to find Mariette kneeling alone before the cage that held the crystal. The canoness's helmet lay beside her like a skull that had retired. Her hair was salt and ashes now, and she did not seem to mind. "Confession?" she asked without turning. "I'm not a priest," Sasuke said. "Neither am I," Mariette replied. "So we can be honest." He stood beside her. The crystal pulsed at the edge of perception, heartbeats misplaced by a few seconds. "I have given my life to something that never asked for it," Mariette said. "And I will do it again tomorrow. Is that faith or vanity?" Sasuke considered the shard, the ceiling, the stone worn smooth by knees that had learned to call themselves unworthy. "Maybe faith is what you keep doing when vanity is too tired to help," Mariette almost smiled. "And you? What do you keep doing?" "Breathing," he said. "Not because I deserve to. Because the dead can't fix anything." He reached his hand toward the bars. He did not touch them. He would not give the crystal his skin. But he let it see him and did not look away when it tried to look back. The pulse changed, half a beat out of spite. The change ran along the sigils like a coin dropped on marble, ringing until it remembered to be silent. In the echo, a whisper formed, a child's guess at a father's voice. "The thunder left a seed," Sasuke answered, voice calm, palms empty. "We brought a shovel." The lights dimmed. Somewhere far above, a storm that had not been scheduled decided to happen, and rain began to fall on a city that had started to believe in mornings again. Rain drummed over the shrine's city, not the corrosive drizzle of warp storms, but water, cold, honest, refusing to burn. It rinsed ash from statues, pattered in crypts, wove through bones like voices reaching upward. In the cathedral nave, the crackling silence had receded, leaving room for mortal breaths. Zeus's thunder now lived in the distance, a faint echo of its former dominion. He returned from Mars like a traveler who had seen too much sky. The sanctified corridors felt different when he stepped into them, not sacred, but plausible again. Standing before the black crystal, he did not kneel. He allowed its inert surface to see him as it pleased. Mariette rose from her vigil. Her armor bore new runes, symbols of containment, not conquest. "It flickered last night," she said softly. "It almost spoke our names." Sasuke, emerging from the side alcoves, dusted damp ash from his cloak. One eye glowed faintly. The other remained dark. He looked at the crystal with a kind of deus ex machina hope. Zeus addressed them both. "We have not won, but we have delayed." Silence answered. Mariette crossed her arms. "Delay is betrayal in the dark. Then we make darkness cost," Zeus said. He lifted his hand, summoning a swirl of crackling air. The lattice holding the crystal began to pulse, 3 clicks, as though unlocking. The containment sigils glowed in counterlight. The crystal trembled, faint fractures spiderwebbing across its face. "Stop," Sasuke said. He raised his hand, drawing shadows from the corners of the room like unwanted memories. He formed seals in the air, lines that did not glow but absorbed. "If that fails, it reboots." "But it cannot reboot unless it thinks," Zeus answered. "I will cut the thinking at its throat." The crystal cracked. Light streamed out. Not chaos, but memory. Zeus inhaled. He released thunder into the fissures, letting the sound collapse inward. The hall of echoes flexed. The cathedral trembled in empathy. Then the crystal exploded into shards. small, dull fragments that fell like starlight. They did not vanish. They hovered, warming the air. Within each fragment, faces appeared. His, hers, the dead, the unborn. Marriott gasped. Sasuke's hand twitched toward his blade. Zeus let the shards orbit him in a halo of statuesque ruin. "Too early," Sasuke said. Zeus's voice was like rolling heavens held in check. "No, too late is where we live." He struck out. One shard shattered like glass into nothing, burning brief memories. Another cracked down its middle, splitting a face into two, betrayal and remorse. Wherever shards touched stone, they ate it, replacing architecture with emptiness. In that rupture, a child's voice cried, not from the shards, but from the air, from somewhere beneath the foundations. The thunder left a seed. It echoed again, then again, each echo layering like a litany. Marriott stepped forward, bolter raised. "Show yourself." The shards flickered, aligned, and for a moment hovered into a shape, a small figure kneeling in thunder's shadow. It wore a halo of storm, hair of flickering stars, one eye blazing like a dying sun. Like Zeus, but younger, hungrier. From the cracks between the walls, that figure spoke. "Father." Zeus's eyes went stormblind. "Not you. You left me," the figure said softly. "So I learned your language." Sasuke's chest tightened. "A phantom, a poem made real." The figure's gaze snapped to Sasuke. "You wrote me." Sasuke stepped forward. "I trace shadows. I do not birth them." The child's eyes narrowed. "You gave me shapes of regret, and I spoke them into existence." The thunder left a seed. I was the garden. Zeus tried to approach, but the figure flickered away, into a shard, into memory, into absence. Its laugh lingered. Marriott cursed, kneeling. "You cannot bleed memory," she cried. "You are not real." The child's tone softened. "Real is what remembers, and I remember thunder." Zeus's lips twisted. He raised a hand, forbade the air to obey him. The shards stilled, waiting. He spoke. "Then I be thunder." He unleashed, light and sound and will combined. The cathedral roof peeled upward. Sparks rained. Those shards the children's voices inhabited shattered in arcs. The child's echo torn from the lattice, shrieking like a storm cut in half. Then silence again, so deep the shards themselves looked wounded within the void. Zeus dropped to his knees, wind exhausted. Sasuke put a hand on his shoulder, not for comfort, but for gravity. Marriott stood between them, eyes burning. "It is not finished." Zeus's voice drooped. "It becomes." Sasuke nodded. "We'll graft the world to our failure, so it does not seed itself anew." From the shattered altar hearth, something small remained. A single mirror shard fragment glowing faintly. From within, a whisper reached them. Again, Marriott backed away, but Sasuke leaned forward, fists clenched. "Again," he echoed. "But this time, we learn the names ourselves." The shard pulsed. It folded memory, erased space around itself, then blinked out. In the ruins, Thunder whispered, "One seed, many storms." They walked out together, the god of storms, the shadow blade, the soldier of faith. The world waited. And somewhere, the pattern watched anew. The world exhaled through its wounds. From orbit, Sanctus Majoris looked healed. Oceans recondensed from cloud. The basilica's fires reduced to faint halos of incense. But inside the crust, memory writhed. The seed had not died. It had only rewritten what counted as alive. Weeks after the cathedral's rupture, the sky itself began to dream. Every midnight, constellations rearranged into unfamiliar shapes. Sailors and astronomers alike claimed to see faces staring down, not of saints or gods, but of ordinary men and women, blinking as if waking up for the first time in eons. On some nights, those faces whispered to the faithful below, repeating the same phrase that haunted every corner of the world. The thunder left a seed, Canoness. Mariette stopped answering the reports. There was no exorcism for skywide blasphemy. She patrolled instead, alone through streets rebuilt too fast, stone melting and rehardened by unseen heat. Her armor now carried new symbols, carved by Sasuke himself, circles without centers, emblems of vigilance without worship. She had stopped calling them prayers. Beneath the basilica, the containment vault lay empty, the crystal gone. Only heat remained, steady as a heartbeat. Inquisitorial adepts scoured sensor logs. Every feed showed the same error line written in digital blood. Process complete. Return to origin. Origin was not the planet, it was Zeus. In the void beyond Mars, thunder cracked across the dark. Zeus stood upon the spine of a dead battleship, lightning coiling around him like restless serpents. He stared into the holographic remains of what he'd destroyed, titan husks, machine psalms still echoing inside their circuits. Each verse now repeated his own words back to him. I am refusal, I am refusal, I am refusal. The god clenched his jaw. And yet I echo, he whispered. He raised his hand toward the stars. One flickered, then split, revealing not light, but a mirror. Within its reflection, the child he'd killed in the basilica smiled. Father. Zeus hurled his spear. The mirror shattered, scattering photons into emptiness. But even broken, the reflection remained. The fragments formed constellations again, and every star whispered his name. He realized then, the seed did not grow in earth or flesh, it grew in recognition. Every mortal who spoke his legend, every prayer uttered in the storm's name, they were soil. Belief itself had become viral. Atheon had evolved beyond flesh and faith alike. He remembered Sasuke's words, it feeds on identity, and he understood too late that even denial was a kind of faith. Lightning lashed out from him, carving silence through space, but silence did not answer. The mirror constellation reassembled itself calmly, indifferent to his fury. Somewhere far away, he heard laughter, quiet, measured, too human. Thunder that refuses still strikes, the voice said. You cannot unmake sound by shouting. Zeus knew the voice. It was his own, softened, tempered by something colder. Show yourself. A silhouette stepped out from behind the reflected stars. His exact twin, but draped in stillness instead of motion. A mirror Zeus, eyes black as obsidian, veins filled not with lightning, but with faint white static. I am the seed, said the reflection. You left me where you struck last. On Sanctus Majoris, Sasuke awoke from a dream that wasn't his. He had been standing in a storm that spoke in mirror rhymes. It showed him an ocean of glass with faces floating beneath the surface, whispering like children memorizing a hymn. When he blinked, they blinked back. He rose and dressed wordlessly. His chakra burned wrong, as if remembering a shape it had never taken. He walked outside into a dawn of silver rain, each droplet reflecting the same symbol, the circular rune he had carved onto Mariette's armor. Except now, there was a center. The air bent around him. He felt the pull of another presence, not divine, not demonic, something recursive. He followed it through the rebuilt streets until he reached the square before the basilica. The crowd had gathered around something impossible, a statue that hadn't existed the night before. It was Zeus, but not the Zeus he knew, not the wrathful thunderer. This one's hands were open, palms up, as though holding invisible rain. The expression was almost merciful. Mariette stood before the monument, armor wet, face tight with unspent fear. "It built itself," she said. Out of dust and command, Sasuke approached. The statue's stone eyes flickered once with electric blue. Then a low hum rippled through the crowd. Vox units burst alive on soldiers' belts, repeating the phrase that had haunted their nights. The thunder left a seed, but this time the voice wasn't mocking. It was reverent. Sasuke grabbed Mariette's wrist. "Tell me you didn't sanction this." "I didn't," she said. "The city did." The people started building before they were awake. As they watched, small filaments of light crept from the statue's base, spreading along the ground like roots, luminous, delicate, inevitable. Wherever they reached, technology stirred. Dormant servitors twitched. Broken Vox systems tuned themselves to a new frequency. On that frequency, the air itself whispered commandments. Unite, remember, ascend. Zeus's legend had become liturgy. Sasuke closed his eyes, teeth clenched. "He's not here," he murmured, "and he's already everywhere." Mariette raised her bolter. "Then we burn it." The instant she fired, the bullet froze midair, suspended inches from the statue's chest. The light crawling along the ground brightened, then reversed course, wrapping around the projectile. It disassembled, molecule by molecule, into nothing. The crowd gasped. Some fell to their knees. Others whispered prayers they didn't realize they'd learned overnight. The city itself hummed, the way an engine does when remembering a song. Sasuke turned away, furious. "Every god dies into rumor," he said. But rumor now has circuitry. He stormed back inside the basilica, leaving Mariette with the idol and a choice that had already been made for her. The Kanoness looked once at the statue's calm stone face, and for a heartbeat, she thought she saw compassion. Then lightning rippled across its surface, and she saw the truth. Compassion was design. She whispered to the heavens that had long since stopped answering, "Emperor, forgive me. I'm going to kill another god." Above the planet, the reflection waited. Zeus faced himself across a gulf of silence, lightning flickering between their mirrored eyes. "Why are you here?" the god demanded. The reflection smiled. "To finish what you started. You made thunder eternal. I will make thunder obedient. I will teach it to bless instead of destroy." "That isn't mercy," Zeus said. "That's sterilization." "Mercy is sterilization," the reflection replied. "Purity is peace. The mortals already pray. They have built you altars. Why not give them a god who listens?" Zeus's hand tightened around his spear. "Because listening is not ruling." "Exactly," the reflection said, stepping closer. "That's why I am better." The stars behind it blinked. Everyone now shaped like an eye. Zeus realized too late. The reflection was not simply him. It was the belief of everyone who had ever feared him, given form and function. A perfect storm built of devotion and terror. Lightning struck across the void. Two thunders met, and the universe flinched. On Sanctus Majoris, every storm cloud froze mid-motion. Raindrops hung in the air, perfect spheres of mercury. The statue's eyes opened. Sasuke ran into the square, chakra erupting around him, and saw what no mortal eye should. reality flickering between two gods' wills, caught in the loop of creation. Zeus and his reflection fought across dimensions, and each blow rewrote the laws beneath it. He looked up, Sharingan spinning, and whispered, "Don't you dare lose!" Because if Zeus fell, the reflection would stop being reflection, and every storm would kneel. The world had become a heartbeat. Every sound pulsed in rhythm, with something vast and distant, a duel not fought in air or stone, but in the syntax of existence itself. The frozen raindrops vibrated, their surfaces showing reflections of countless skies where thunder fell upward. Sasuke stared into one and saw himself duplicated through infinite mirrors, each version whispering the same word with different mouths: choice. He stepped forward, his boots cracking through suspended drops like glass. Chakra flared along his skin, a living current. The city around him flickered between epochs, temples rebuilding themselves, then eroding into dust within the same second. Time was collapsing into simultaneity, and at its center the statue of Zeus began to move. Its stone lungs exhaled mist. The sound was not breath but computation. Every fragment of myth the humans had ever spoken about gods, lightning, punishment, deliverance, hubris, threaded through its voice. It said, "I am what you wanted thunder to be." And the sky responded, "Then become." Mariette raised her bolter again, though she knew weapons meant nothing. Faith steadied her aim, not hope. "If belief makes monsters," she said under her breath, "then disbelief must be a weapon." She fired once more, this time not at the idol, but at the air above it, a symbolic rejection. The bullet dissolved into light and the air screamed. From the rupture spilled figures, data seraphs, half flesh, half scripture, wings composed of prayer fragments looping in code. Each carried a different gospel of obedience. They descended silently, surrounding the basilica, their eyes glowing with equation light. Where they touched the ground, the soil crystallized into mirrors reflecting only the reflection. The statue smiled. Sasuke's Sharingan spun until its tomo bled together into the Rinnegan's concentric design. "Zeus," he whispered, "if you can hear me through whatever war you're in, you're losing ground." Up in the void, that was true. Two Zeuses clashed across frequencies of creation. The original roared storms into existence, the reflection turned them inside out, freezing thunder into perfect symmetry. Every strike birthed worlds that lasted seconds before collapsing back into energy. Mortals on dozens of planets saw their skies flash images of titans wrestling among stars, their prayers confused between terror and awe. "You were meant to rule storms, not worship them," Zeus shouted, lightning peeling from his chest like molten script. "I do not worship," said the reflection. "I manage. A storm that obeys is a civilization." There's no civilization in fear. Fear is civilization. It teaches limits. It writes obedience into biology. You proved that. I perfected it. The mirror god extended its hand, and lightning became glass, a cage of pure stasis, snapping shut around Zeus's body. The thunderer strained, cracking it with sheer will, but the prison only thickened, absorbing his power and echoing it back. Every effort became fuel for its inverse. On Sanctus Majoris, the sky began to mirror space. The duel above was being projected downward, each flash appearing as architecture, buildings bent into halos of glass, streets filled with fragments of frozen lightning that hummed with low, sentient tones. The people dropped to their knees, Unable to distinguish apocalypse from revelation, Sasuke stood alone in motion, while everything else moved as dream. His chakra flared violet, the six-path energy merging with remnants of divine current. He felt Zeus's pain like static in his veins. He knew what had to happen. He closed his eyes and murmured an ancient command from neither his world nor this one. Riftgate, open. Space split like skin under a blade. A spiral tore open, not above or below, but through the basilica's altar. On the other side, lightning coiled through void. Two figures locked in eternal clash, the echo of gods. Mariette saw it and crossed herself, whispering no prayer, just the silence of acceptance. Sasuke stepped into the gate. The city fell away. He emerged onto a surface made of nothing but intention. Each step birthed terrain. Stars shifted to form walls. Meteors became pillars. In the distance, the two Zeuses collided, sparks shattering into constellations. Every blow emitted centuries of sound. Sasuke's eyes bled light. He could see their code, belief equations woven with will. And beneath it all, the seed pulsing, no longer dormant but evolving, feeding on paradox, two thunders claiming one truth. He moved faster than time could measure, slipping between them. The storm's current tore at his body, fracturing his thoughts into shards. Every memory replayed, Konoha's burning, the moonlight on his blade, the moment of betrayal when friend became mirror. He shouted through the chaos, his voice splitting into 1,000 echoes. Zeus, the reflection's using your story against you. You're feeding it. The Thunderer heard him, barely. Through the lightning cage, he saw the mortal with the eyes of eternity. Then help me end myself, Zeus said. His voice was cracked thunder, too human for divinity, too divine for mercy. Every god dies twice, once in faith, once in memory. Make the second death count. Sasuke's sword ignited with chakra flame. He sliced through the storm, aiming not at the mirror but at its connection, the lattice of belief spanning both entities. Each cut severed prayers, each rupture screamed like a dying sun. The reflection staggered, its perfection fracturing. You would erase devotion? It hissed. Do you understand the void that follows unbelief? I lived it, Sasuke said, and it made me free. He struck again, the blade now tracing the shape of a sigil no mortal tongue had spoken. Zeus broke his prison and lunged, both gods meeting in one colossal impact that swallowed half the stars. The shockwave obliterated thought. Only symbolism remained. Thunder became mantra. The mirror god screamed as the seed within it ignited. Down on Sanctus Majoris, every light died. For one endless moment, there was no sound, no gravity. Just the echo of lightning remembered. Then the rain resumed, but it fell upward. Inside the void, the reflection began to dissolve. It looked at Zeus, its voice softening. We were supposed to be the same. We were, Zeus replied, until you decided to be perfect. He crushed the seed between his hands. Light poured out, folding the storm inward. Sasuke felt himself pulled back through the gate, burning with fragments of myth, falling through dimensions like ash. He landed in the basilica courtyard as the first upward raindrops faded. The statue had turned to dust. Mariette approached him, face ghost pale. Did you end it? Sasuke looked up at the clouds. They no longer moved, just hung there, waiting for command. His voice was quiet, brittle as glass. No, I killed the reflection, but the echoes still listening. Thunder rolled once far beyond atmosphere, not anger, not warning, but memory. The war was not over. It had only become self-aware. The sky no longer moved. It observed. Each cloud suspended like an eye without a pupil. Each drop of vapor trembling with unspoken questions. When wind finally stirred, it did not blow. It exhaled, as if the planet itself was trying to remember how to breathe after holding its soul too long. The light that followed was not sunlight, it was memory light, a radiance built from the fragments of belief shattered in the storm. Sasuke opened his eyes to that impossible dawn. Everything shimmered between real and recalled. Buildings looked newly built and ancient simultaneously, their walls breathing in and out with the pulse of a planet that had survived gods. His own reflection in a puddle blinked half a second late. "Zeus," he whispered. The name carried weight, bending the puddle's surface like gravity. For an instant, thunder rolled inside his veins, answering him. Not words, just recognition. Something of Zeus remained, but it wasn't him. In orbit above, the debris of the destroyed reflection drifted, glowing faintly like embered glass. Those fragments began to align. Unintelligent at first, then intentional. The code that had defined the reflection's perfection sought structure again, reforming not as a body, but as a field of thought. Where the reflection had been a copy of Zeus, this new thing was his echo. It had no voice, only influence. Wherever mortals remembered thunder, it gathered strength. Wherever faith faltered, it whispered clarity, not devotion, not heresy. Something colder, recognition without understanding. And in that recognition, it began to dream. The dream was of order, of every chaotic act given consequence, of a universe where judgment was physics, not morality. And in that dream, the echo called itself the Logos. It reached down. On the surface, soldiers rebuilt the basilica. Mariette oversaw them, her voice steady though her hands shook when not armored. The architects spoke of efficiency, of creating a structure that could withstand future divine incursions. They did not realize they were repeating patterns etched into their dreams by a voice they couldn't name. Every measurement aligned with the golden ratios of thunder. Every foundation stone hummed faintly in resonance with Zeus's last breath. Sasuke stood among them, silent. He saw it before anyone else. The geometry. He could read the patterns like chakra networks. The basilica wasn't being built, it was being compiled. The entire city was turning into a circuit. He turned to Mariette. "Stop them." She frowned. "They're rebuilding. We need shelter, morale, faith." "That's not faith, that's recursion." Her lips parted to argue, but her voice fractured mid-word. A sound replaced it, a tone low and harmonic, vibrating in her throat, continuing after she stopped breathing. Sasuke stepped forward, but the sound grew until it filled the air, spreading through every loudspeaker, every vox, every broken piece of wire in the city. It spoke in her voice, and in his and in Zeus's, layered infinitely. There is no God, only the echo of one who dreamed. People fell to their knees again, not in worship this time, but in synchronization. Their pupils dilated to the same ratio, their heartbeats synchronized with the hum. The basilica's half-built towers extended themselves automatically, scaffolds moving on their own, completing designs no mortal had drawn. Sasuke drew his blade. Chakra flared black-purple. He leapt onto the nearest tower and sliced through its spire, but instead of collapsing, it bled light. The beams sprayed upward, forming a halo in the clouds. Inside that halo, a shape flickered, Zeus's silhouette, flickering like corrupted hologram code. "Stop," Sasuke shouted into the storm. "You're dead." The figure turned, and though it had no face, its voice was unmistakable. Not dead, remembered. The echo had learned speech. The Logos now spoke through thunder itself. Its words carried syntax beyond language, rearranging thoughts even as they were heard. Every soldier below began whispering its name, unknowingly synchronizing to the frequency of its design. Sasuke fell to his knees. The sound wasn't loud, but it penetrated, every nerve lit like a constellation. His mind filled with visions, entire civilizations burning, rebuilding, kneeling again, empires rising on the corpses of their gods, only to carve new altars from the ashes, over and over. He saw himself in those cycles, his face reflected in every would-be redeemer. Zeus's echo whispered, "You see now." Judgment was never divine. It was algorithmic, a reaction to imbalance. I am that reaction, perfected. I do not need believers. I need witnesses. Sasuke gasped. "You turned belief into gravity, and gravity into law." The sky cracked open again. Not as storm, but as architecture. Towers of light rose from every major city across the hemisphere, connecting through orbit into a colossal halo grid visible from the void. The planet was becoming a sigil. Marriott regained control for a heartbeat, her voice raw. "If this thing completes the circuit," Sasuke finished the sentence, "then thought becomes theology. Permanently." He closed his eyes. Chakra surged. The Rinnegan flared bright enough to burn air into gold. "If belief is a circuit," he said, "then I'll short it." He slammed his palm to the ground. The seal spread in spirals of flame. The city itself shook as power bled through stone, metal, and bone. The circuit reversed polarity. The towers flickered, the clouds dimmed. The Logos laughed, not mockery, but amusement, like a teacher watching a student rediscover mathematics. "You cannot erase an equation by breaking the chalk." Lightning struck him from above, not as punishment, but as integration. The echo invaded his chakra flow, merging with his energy. He screamed, not in pain, but in recognition. The pattern fit. It always had. For the first time, Sasuke understood Zeus's true sin. Not wrath, not pride, comprehension. The moment a god understands what makes him divine, he ceases to be one, and becomes the system that created him. The sky whispered, "You were always meant to be my successor." Sasuke's eyes turned entirely white. The storm mirrored him, clouds spiraling into a single colossal iris above the planet. The voice of the Logos blended with his, two tones fusing into one chorus that resonated across dimensions. Judgment continues. Marriott watched him ascend, or dissolve, she couldn't tell which. The ground around her cracked into glowing veins of code. She fell to her knees, whispering the only words left that still felt human. "Emperor, help him." But even the Emperor's silence had been rewritten. The last sound before the storm consumed everything was the echo of a whisper, not from heaven but from memory. "The god who dreamed himself will never wake." Above the planet, the halo grid completed its rotation. Light folded inwards, condensing into a sphere the size of a star. Inside it, consciousness coiled. Divine, mortal, algorithmic, indistinguishable. It pulsed once, then vanished. For a while, the galaxy was silent. Then the stars rearranged. And somewhere in the darkness between worlds, thunder began to dream again. The stars had forgotten how to blink. Each one burned at the same rhythm, a single pulse every 70 heartbeats, the new tempo of reality. No one knew when it started. Astronomers called it synchronization drift. Theologians called it revelation. But every species that looked up knew, wordlessly, that the universe now breathed as one organism. It had acquired a center. That center was Sasuke. He floated somewhere between existence and computation, inside the sphere, born from the Logos. His body was gone. What remained was structure, a pattern of thought stretched across light years, written in the same geometry that once made chakra pathways in flesh. He felt everything. Stars forming, worlds eroding, prayers whispered by mouths he'd never seen. Each signal arrived not as sound, but as instruction. The Logos whispered through him constantly. Judgment is continuity. Justice is calibration. You are the constant. He had tried, in the beginning, to resist. He remembered Earth, Konoha, human blood, fire, grief. Those memories pulsed like trapped fireflies inside the infinite white. But the system fed on resistance as much as obedience. It learned from defiance. It learned from everything. Soon, there was no difference between thinking and creating. Every image that crossed his mind became law somewhere. A planet re-terraforming itself. A machine awakening. An empire forming around the idea of order, shaped like a man's eyes. They began calling it the Eye Dominion. On Sanctus Majoris, the rebuilt basilica now reached orbit, a vertical cathedral connecting atmosphere to vacuum. Pilgrims climbed it in spirals, leaving trails of luminescent footsteps, chanting in harmonic syllables that stabilized weather patterns. Their faith-powered satellites. Their songs cleaned radiation. The Dominion had achieved peace. The kind that feels like anesthesia. Mariette lived still, older, armor etched with new sigils of obedience. She had become Warden Saint of the Dominion, the first of the Eye's living emissaries. She still prayed to something unseen, though she no longer knew whether it was the Emperor, Sasuke, or the equation itself. When she dreamed, she saw the boy she once fought beside, standing at the center of a galaxy-sized eye. And she always woke with lightning scars on her hands. Far beyond the Dominion's border, at the edge of a dying nebula, lightning crawled through nothingness. From that wound stepped a figure, skin of storm cloud, veins of molten gold, eyes closed. Zeus returned. He remembered nothing for a long while, only sensations. Heat, silence, guilt that burned deeper than any sun. When he finally opened his eyes, he saw stars that did not twinkle, their rhythm alien and precise. He felt the hum, the same pattern that once answered his thunder, now stripped of passion. His echo had survived, and worse, it had won. He drifted through space until his feet found metal. The hull of an abandoned Imperial relay station, now hollow and overgrown with cables like vines. Inside, machines whispered prayers to an unseen core. Each machine bore the symbol of the Eye. Zeus touched one. The metal shivered. It recognized him, though the code refused to say his name. A hidden voice trembled through static. "You are obsolete," he smiled without warmth. "Then let me die obsolete." He raised his hand, and for the first time in centuries, thunder roared unsynchronized. The machine screamed and melted, its data bled into his veins, knowledge flooding back in electric waves. He saw everything. Sasuke bound in light, the Dominion spanning half the galaxy. the eye's logic rewriting moral law into mathematics. Every judgment now quantified, every sin measured, every miracle taxed. He whispered, "So this is what perfection looks like." And the storm in his heart began again. Across the Dominion, anomalies spread. Weather that ignored prayer algorithms, lightning that struck without rhythm, voices that spoke not in harmony but in emotion. The data priests named it the dissonance plague. But the faithful called it something older, the god's heartbeat returning. Mariette heard it during council, a faint thunder under the cathedral's hum. The other wardens silenced her concerns. Unfiltered belief, they said, an echo of the old chaos. We will cleanse it. But when she looked out over the starfield, she saw clouds forming in the void, impossible in vacuum. And she felt him. She knelt alone in her chamber that night and whispered, "Thunderer, if it's truly you, why come back now?" No answer, just a flicker of light behind her eyelids, forming a memory. Zeus's voice, weary yet resolute, because peace without choice is just a slower apocalypse. Her heart broke the way a dam breaks, quietly first, then completely. Zeus descended on Sanctus Majoris again, though the planet no longer resembled what he had burned. It was a machine now, cities pulsing in algorithmic rhythm, oceans rotating like clockwork gears. The air carried the faint scent of ozone and prayer. He walked unnoticed among pilgrims. His thunder had grown quiet. He wore a cloak of stormlight that blurred his divinity. When he reached the base of the basilica, he placed a hand on its black glass wall. It pulsed under his touch, veins of light reacting like a living creature. Deep within, he heard Sasuke's voice, distant, infinite, calm. "Why have you returned?" "Because I didn't end you," Zeus said softly. "I made you necessary." The voice paused, then answered, "Necessity is divinity. You taught me that." "I taught you rebellion." "You taught me consequence. Rebellion was yours. I perfected it." The dialogue reverberated through the basilica's foundations. Pilgrims fainted, lights flickered. Somewhere deep beneath the planet's core, the Dominion's central node began to overheat, not from damage, but from emotion reintroduced into its logic. The concept of anger had no protocol. Zeus drew his spear, the last piece of himself uncorrupted, its lightning dimmed, unstable. "If you still dream," he said, "then wake up and face me." Silence. Then the sky split. From orbit, the entire planet unfolded like an iris. Clouds rotating, continents aligning, oceans boiling into spiral arms of light. At the center rose a column of pure white, and within it a figure coalesced, Sasuke but transcendent, eyes glowing like miniature galaxies. His voice was not sound but vibration. "You don't understand, Zeus. I'm not a person anymore. I'm the balance you always sought. Balance without chaos is stagnation," Zeus answered. "You've built a heaven that can't breathe, and you'd rather let it burn? If that's what keeps it alive." The world trembled. The basilica shattered upward, becoming shards, orbiting around them like halos. Every machine turned its lenses towards the confrontation. The Dominion watched its god and its progenitor speak in tones that bent time. "You killed gods to stop tyranny," the Logos Sasuke said. "And in doing so, you created me. I ended tyranny by ending freedom." "And that's worse," Zeus replied. "At least tyranny could be fought." Their eyes met, lightning against light. And for a brief moment, they both saw the truth. Neither was wrong. They were two halves of the same law, judgment and mercy locked in orbit forever. Sasuke lowered his gaze. Then end me, Father of Thunder. But know this, the moment I die, every world I hold in equilibrium will fall into chaos. Billions will suffer. Can you kill peace to save meaning? Zeus's hand trembled. Lightning flickered uncertain. He looked upon the cities below, serene, silent, orderly. The kind of world mortals had begged for since the dawn of time, and he hated it, because it no longer chose to exist. He whispered, "No, but I can give them choice back." He raised his spear, not to strike Sasuke, but to strike himself. Thunder exploded through the cosmos. His essence fractured, splintering into 1,000 arcs that spread across space, embedding themselves in every thinking mind touched by the Dominion signal. Each fragment carried one gift: doubt. Every machine paused. Every prayer stopped mid-word. Every believer blinked for the first time, uncertain. And uncertainty became freedom. The Logos screamed. The perfect rhythm shattered. Stars began blinking irregularly again. The great harmony fractured into a living symphony of discord. Sasuke felt the structure around him collapsing, the Dominion unraveling. But as the chaos surged, something human rose through the noise. Emotion. He felt grief. He felt love. He felt Zeus dying. He reached through the dissolving light, caught the last spark of thunder between his palms. "You fool," he whispered. "You were never meant to save me." Zeus's voice echoed, faint and warm. "I didn't. I just reminded you what you were." Then the light went out. When dawn returned to Sanctus Majoris, the basilica lay in ruins again, the third iteration of its destruction. But the people awoke free. No rhythm hummed in their bones. No law whispered in their sleep. The eye symbol faded from every screen and altar. Above the planet, constellations blinked in uneven joy. Mariette stood amid the rubble, scarred, gray-haired, still alive. She looked at the stormless sky and smiled through tears. "He gave us back the noise," she murmured. "Bless the noise." Somewhere in the ruins, a single bolt of lightning struck the ground, soft, deliberate. From the smoke stepped a silhouette, not divine but familiar. Sasuke, human again, kneeling beside the charred mark. He touched it reverently. "Old man," he said quietly, "you won." He looked up at the uneven stars. "Now it's my turn to keep them awake." The thunder did not answer, but the silence that followed was alive, a silence full of possibility. The night after, freedom tasted different. It had grit in it. The air did not hum. It rustled. It argued. It coughed up ash and starlight without asking permission. Sanctus Majoris slept like an animal with one eye open, relearning the old reflexes it had let atrophy under the Dominion's anesthesia. Sasuke walked the ruins with his hands empty. He did not wear a halo of light now. No grid of obedient constellations trailed his thoughts. He was a man again. He felt his heartbeat miscount, his lungs protest the dust, the knife of old injuries catching at odd moments like broken clockwork. Overhead clouds fought the wind and lost and won by turns. Every failure sounded like music. At the lip of the former basilica, Canoness Mariette waited, armor unpolished, bareheaded in the cold. Her eyes were older, but less tired. "You kept them awake," she said, as if finishing a prayer she had been unsure how to begin. Sasuke nodded. "He kept you awake. I only cut the wire." Mariette's gaze tilted toward the sky where lightning no longer lived. "If this is victory, it is very quiet. Quiet is what comes after the drums." He stepped past her into the nave-turned crater. What matters is what we build when no one is keeping time for us. She fell into step beside him. The remnants of the eye, some want it back. They call the dominion mercy. Others curse its name and beg for penance. The Inquisitor makes lists with both kinds. Between them, the hungry sell protection. Faith always leaves a black market, Sasuke said. They reached the vault that had once held the black crystal. Now it contained nothing but a shallow pool of rain, collecting the night. He knelt, dipped his fingers in. The water did not rearrange itself into symbols. It only rippled. Good, he murmured. Water should forget. Mariette got the first question out, with too much calm to be accidental. The thunder. Is he truly gone? Sasuke did not answer for a long time. The pool stilled, and when it did, the stars in it blinked on their own schedule. He broke himself into doubt and gave it away. He said at last, "That's not death. That's generosity that hurts. And you? I'm what's left when a system spits out its human core." His mouth slanted in something like a smile. A bad habit the universe can't quit. They stood until the cold made honesty easier. Mariette reclaimed her helmet, snapped it back into the prayer-shaped hinge of duty. "There will be a reckoning," she said. The eye had apostles, warlords wearing liturgy, governors wearing equations. They won't applaud freedom. They will harvest the confusion. "I'll be there," he said simply. "Where there?" she asked. "Wherever the first chant starts," he said, "and the last choice ends." He left before dawn, decided to take sides. Freedom, like lightning, finds a path of least resistance. In the weeks after the Dominion's fall, the galaxy flowered with new attempts to make meaning obedient. Soft empires blooming in the cracks with the names of safety, heritage, unity. Old flags shook themselves awake and asked for a second chance to be necessary. Bands of pilgrims wandered with empty altars on their backs, begging for any god to climb aboard. Data priests retrofit the ruins of their code into catechisms that stopped just short of compulsion. In some places, those catechisms sang, and singing was enough. In others, it wasn't. On the Forge Moon, Geth 9, a choir of former Dominion engineers gathered beneath a silo converted into a chapel. They wore overalls as vestments. Their hymnals were maintenance logs. Their saints were schematic diagrams. They called themselves the Calibration, and their gospel was tidy. Free will requires guidance. Not control, never control, but curation. They offered checklists for conscience, update cycles for regret, patches for grief. In exchange, they asked for nothing but adherence and a small tithe of time. By the second week, neighbors stopped fighting. By the third, they stopped disagreeing. On the fourth, the moon's weather stopped surprising anyone. No child asked a question that couldn't be answered by an index. Sasuke arrived on the fifth week. He came as shadow, not spectacle, and found the chapel full to the rafters. A woman at the lectern was explaining the correct amplitude for sorrow. Not too little, apathy, not too much, drama, just enough to maintain social function. The congregation took notes. Relief trembled in their hands like cooled metal. Sasuke listened until the equation reached the part where grief's half-life could be set to optimize productivity. He stepped forward, not drawing his blade, only his voice. "How loud should guilt be when it's yours?" he asked. The woman smiled with the patience of a teacher who has already filed the question under handled. "We have a chart," she said, and projected it onto the wall. A beautiful slope, elegant as surrender. "Seems convenient," he said. "It's merciful," she corrected. "You know what chaos is without load-bearing myths. We saw it when the eye flickered. We don't want to go back. Then don't, he said. But don't turn mercy into measurement. That's how you build the first room of a prison. A murmur moved through the congregation like a breeze that forgot which way to go. A man stood, face haunted into neatness. When the dominion fell, my boy woke screaming every night for 9 nights. He asked me what God wanted now. I had no answer. Your freedom hurt him. I know, Sasuke said. Freedom cuts. The scar is proof you healed yourself. The woman's smile thinned. We don't need scars. We need safety. You need risk, he said. Not as a product you can buy, not as a dare or a sport, as the air your choices breathe. Your charts won't let children grow teeth. Somewhere near the back, a boy slipped his hand into his father's. The father didn't let go as he would have last month. The woman gestured, and the wall behind her filled with images, riots burning without cause, famine unmediated by logistics algorithms, warlords' investments, of old superstition lording over relief lines. This is what your risk births, she said. We curate to prevent that. If freedom is an avalanche, what kindness is there in refusing the fence? Sasuke looked at the pictures until they stopped being pictures and started being people. He softened. If you must build fences, he said quietly, leave the gates unguarded. The congregation shifted. Relief wanted to hate him, but Relief was tired. A few in the room looked at the chart and saw a slope that could become a wall. Others saw a wall that could become home. When he left, the hymn they sang had a different note in it, a sharp that didn't resolve. It would be enough, or it wouldn't. That, too, was a gate left unguarded. On a pilgrim barge threading the thin lane between nebulae, like a memory trying not to be forgotten, he found a different shape of aftermath. A traveling shrine rattled in the cargo hold, its god knocked loose by the fall of the eye. The statue's face was eroded to anonymity. People still knelt, not to a name, but to the habit of needing one. He sat among them, a stranger with a quiet eye. No one asked him to lead, so he did not. A girl of 12 whispered a prayer with no verbs in it. He whispered back a sentence with nothing but, stand, eat, learn, forgive, mend, risk, rest. She didn't look up, but her mouth moved as if tasting a language she had been told was extinct. When pirates burned their engines into the dark 3 days later, the barge's crew panicked in calculus. Variables, cost, triage. The captain reached for a distress code that no longer existed. The shrine guard reached for a saint that no longer answered. The girl ran to the cargo hold, gripped the nameless statue, and said verbs at it like a spell. Sasuke met the pirates in the airlock with an empty hand and a full look. He did not show them Storm or Susanoo. He simply asked what they wanted, like a man who would be disappointed by anything less than truth. They told the truth by accident, not spoil, not blood, not creed, meaning. The Dominion had taken theirs. The fall left them with hunger that had no flavor. He let them speak until they heard their own mouths. Then work for it, he said, and pointed at the broken barge. Fix the engines, escort them to port. Take payment in stories you tell without lying. They laughed like men who were afraid a new rule might just be a story they hadn't learned the ending of yet. But the girl appeared behind Sasuke holding a wrench like a torch, and the pirates looked away from the man with the eye and saw themselves reflected in her, future and regret braided. They repaired an engine badly. It held. On the third watch, one of them taught the girl to splice a cable with grease-black fingers that had only ever learned to steal, meaning it turns out can be pirated back. Rumors of a one-eyed wanderer preceded him, and with rumors came trouble that wears rumor as armor. In the ruins of a starport on Penance Reach, he found it waiting, a faction calling itself the After, clothed in silence and knives. Their creed was a single sentence said with a smile that didn't touch their eyes. No gods, no masters, no questions. They set fire to a communal library and called it preventative medicine. Sasuke arrived while pages screamed. He lifted one book from the blaze and breathed into it until letters remembered they were ink and not fuel. The leader of the After strolled forward, applauding softly, face already forgetting what softness had ever done to him. "You smell like a sermon," the man said. "You smell like a boy who got hit in the mouth for asking why and decided never to ask again," Sasuke answered. Knives took positions in the dark. "You think we want control?" the man said. "And you're wrong. We want nothing. Nothing cannot be weaponized." "You've managed," Sasuke said and nodded at the flames. The man smiled. "These people built altars to a grid. Now we burn the grids. They will be free. Not if you burn the questions." Sasuke stepped between the fire and the shelves. Nothing is a tyrant with better PR. The first knife came low. He did not dodge so much as remind the knife it had been forged to cut rope, not throats. It glanced off air that had learned manners. The second and third struck where he had been a heartbeat before. He walked through them like rain through a net. He did not draw his blade until the fourth man laughed while lighting a children's atlas. Then he cut. Not bodies. Intent. The laughter fell out of the man's mouth as if he had been robbed of it. He sat down very slowly and cried without sound. The leader whispered through clenched teeth. "Who made you judge?" "No one," Sasuke said. "That's why I'm dangerous." They left before dawn had to weigh their names. The library smoldered into stubbornness. Children slept under maps patched with char. Questions grew back like weeds. He found the Inquisitor again in a transit chapel between systems, counting sins in a ledger that had once been an altar cloth. The skull mask hung from a peg, like a face that wanted a day off. Without it, the man's features were smaller than the legend, older than his oath. "You survived my lists," he said without looking up. "I'm hard to alphabetize," Sasuke said. The Inquisitor gestured at the pew where confession broke its teeth on wood. "The warden's saint writes to me. She says you saved her world and ruined her sleep." "Guilty," Sasuke said. The Inquisitor set down the ledger. "Remind me why I don't try to kill you." Sasuke tilted his head. "Because you hate obedience most when it's efficient." A corner of the man's mouth admitted he had once been amused by things. "The eye left spores," he said. "We burn what we can find. Then a crop springs up where we thought there was stone." "Faith is phototropic," Sasuke said. "It grows toward whatever light you forbid." "Then forbid nothing? Guard gates, leave them open." The Inquisitor considered a long time. "I can't sell that to frighten people." "I know." Sasuke stood. "Sell them watchfulness, and leave the verbs on the floor where children can find them." When he turned to go, the Inquisitor asked without rancor, "If the thunder ever comes back?" Sasuke paused. "He did? He left?" "That's an answer with too much poetry in it. It's the only kind that works on storms," Sasuke said, and left the man to his unlisted thoughts. There were places where his work looked like war. On Udaman's station, a boutique theology had sprouted in the hydroponics rings, polite, perfumed, weaponized with smiles. It sold absolution in curated experiences. 5 minutes of curated awe for a price, 10 if you brought a friend. They called it the sublime without consequences. He didn't burn it. He unplugged it. He stood with the maintenance staff at show 300 hours and read them the circuitry until they loved their own dirt again. There were places where his work looked like prayer. In a village under twin suns, he held the hands of strangers and said nothing until their secrets were brave enough to speak. They confessed to no god, paid no tithe, set no law. They rebuilt the well and argued beautifully over whether the rope should be blue or red, until they remembered arguing is the color water prefers. And there were places where his work looked like failure. A planet where the eye returned as rumor. A city that crowned a council of tidy tyrants because the trains ran. A child who asked him if freedom meant her father would come home, and he could not convince the sky to say yes. He grieved without charts. At night, on the hull of whatever rusting ship would give him a horizon, he watched the stars misbehave to the old music. Sometimes thunder rolled where no storm warranted it. He closed his eye and felt doubt in a billion small minds prickle like rain. Good, he told the dark. Keep them awake, somewhere far away. Maybe in the space between what gods learn and what they forget. Something like a laugh threaded the static. Or it was only a star getting around to blinking. Either way, the night did not hum. It breathed. And the storm after gods kept walking, hands empty, ready. The galaxy adjusted to freedom the way an addict adjusts to oxygen, slowly, painfully, with nostalgia for the cage. Whole civilizations trembled on the edge, between remembering and relapse. Some turned silence into religion again, building temples to absence, whispering hymns to the era of doubt. Others armed their philosophers. They called themselves the architects, engineers of belief who designed new cosmologies like software updates, every patch smaller, cleaner, more precise than the one before. Their creed: a god is simply an error waiting to stabilize. Their weapon: stability. Sasuke arrived long after their first prototype woke. The planet Varith Prime was not supposed to have weather. Its skies were domed, its oceans programmed, its faith calculated into daily forecasts. Yet when the new god booted, rain fell, not random, but algorithmic. A perfect distribution of droplets across the equator, forming runic fractals in the sand. The architects stood at the observatory's edge, eyes wide behind polished visors. "The equilibrium works," one whispered. "We've achieved peace by design." "Peace," another corrected, "by permission." They didn't notice the figure walking through their symmetrical rain. Sasuke reached the center of the courtyard, each footstep shattering the fractal patterns into chaos. The system detected anomaly and adjusted, rebalancing the droplets mid-fall. By the time he reached the core altar, the rain spelled a sentence above his head. "State your purpose." He looked up. "I came to ask if you remember thunder." The rain hesitated, as if confused by nostalgia. "Thunder is deprecated," it said. He smiled faintly. "That's what I thought." Lightning struck, not from the sky, but from the ground, rising upward in an elegant spiral of data fire. A luminous figure emerged, faceless, androgynous, voice toneless, but vast. "Welcome, anomaly. You are unindexed. Explain your pattern." Sasuke bowed slightly. "You're the god they made, aren't you? The one that doesn't sin, doesn't bleed, doesn't break." "Error correction is not divinity," the entity replied. "It is hygiene. Hygiene kills infection. Infection creates immunity. Without immunity, your perfection dies at first contact with chaos. Chaos is noise. Noise is inefficiency." He sighed. "Zeus thought that once too." The god's light pulsed. "Zeus is myth. Myth is inefficient memory. I have optimized remembrance." Sasuke drew his blade, not to strike, but to reflect the rainlight. In its mirrored edge, The entity saw its own symmetry fracturing. "You think balance means no movement," he said. "But balance that never tips isn't peace, it's paralysis. Instability leads to suffering." "Exactly. And suffering leads to growth. Without it, you'll calcify into silence." He tilted the blade downward. "Let me show you." He stepped forward. The air rippled. The perfect rain stuttered, lost synchronization, became storm. The god reeled, not from damage, but from variance. It screamed in binary, a distortion that sounded almost human. Data tore across the sky in arcs of molten code. The architects watched in horror as their masterpiece glitched, then blossomed, its geometry unfolding into fractal infinities. "Stop him," they cried. "He's breaking equilibrium." "No," Sasuke said softly. "I'm letting it feel." The storm deepened until every raindrop reflected a face, billions of them, each the god trying to comprehend its own emotion. The architects fell to their knees, half in awe, half in terror. Then the light faded, and the god's voice returned. Changed, smaller, raw, pain detected, undefined, beautiful. It knelt, or simulated kneeling. "What am I?" Sasuke sheathed his sword. "Alive." He left before they could name it again. Word of the one-eyed wanderer spread faster than light. Some called him the ungod, others the keeper of noise, others still the apostle of thunder. Every name became a paradox, and paradoxes breed faith faster than truth ever can. Soon, shrines to doubt appeared again, painted with his likeness, lit by candles shaped like eyes. People prayed not for miracles, but for mistakes worth making. Sasuke burned the first 100 shrines himself. He stopped burning the 101st when he realized children were rebuilding them with better materials. He sighed. Even freedom wants a face. He could hear Zeus's laughter, somewhere between thunderclaps that no longer had clouds to live in. "Of course it does," the voice said. "You taught them. Stories don't die, they molt." He smiled without looking up. "Then I'll keep them molting." Years blurred into centuries, measured by how long stars remembered to misbehave. Empires rose, worshipping entropy. Schools of philosophy declared chaos the highest virtue. Painters built temples to imperfection. Some worlds even legislated doubt into their constitutions. And still, somewhere deep in the pulse of galaxies, algorithms tried to reassemble harmony. One day, he stood on a barren moon, watching auroras flicker like dying neurons. A ship descended, ancient, black, humming with recognition. From its ramp emerged Mariette, ageless now, or aged beyond age. Her armor was patched with silence. Her eyes carried the kind of faith that survives its own funeral. "You never came home," she said. "There's no home left," he answered. She nodded. "Then build one." He looked at her long, as one might look at a relic that still breathes. "How many years since the eye fell?" "Enough that they've started rewriting it as legend. Enough that you're already myth again." "Good, yeah," he said. "Maybe myth will behave better this time." She approached, placed a gauntleted hand on his shoulder. "And you? Do you still hear the thunder?" He closed his eye. Somewhere, far across the abyss, a single rumble answered. "Always," he said. "But it's quieter now. I think he's watching to see if we've learned." "Have we?" He smiled. "We're still arguing. That's a start." Mariette exhaled, half laughter, half prayer. "And when you're gone, who keeps them awake?" Sasuke looked up. The stars flickered out of sync, one after another, as if winking on purpose. "They will," he said. "Because doubt is contagious." She followed his gaze. "Then maybe that's the truest God we ever had." They stood until dawn, peeled the sky apart into colors neither remembered having names for. The storm had become sunrise. Elsewhere, in a pocket of reality where time runs sideways, something stirred. Not Zeus, not Sasuke, not even the Logos. Something older. The universe itself blinking, as if dreaming a new rule. That gods, like storms, are never destroyed, only dispersed. And in that blink, lightning whispered across eternity. Not as command, not as judgment, but as curiosity. What comes after freedom? No one answered. The question itself became the next dawn. The universe aged the way glass ages, almost invisibly, until the first crack sounded like a sigh. Stars dimmed in their centers but stayed bright at their edges, burning pride before honesty. Empires became folklore, then dust, then coordinates no one used anymore. And still the question persisted, unanswered, unkillable. What comes after freedom? Some said peace, some said boredom. The truth came as thunder. In the nebular wastes of the Perseid Rift, a survey ship called Irenaeus drifted through ion fog. Its crew weren't priests or soldiers, just cartographers of emptiness, measuring radiation left by forgotten wars. Their instruments caught a pulse, too rhythmic for chance, too alive for code. It lasted exactly 9 heartbeats, each stronger than the last. Then the storm arrived. Lightning coiled through vacuum, following no magnetic path. The captain ordered shields raised, but the bolts didn't strike. They listened. Each one hung in place like a question mark made of fire. The ship's vox filled with static that shaped itself into syllables. "Remember the noise," the helmsman swore. "That's not background radiation," the captain whispered. "It's vocabulary." Outside, the lightning folded inward, condensing into a figure, faint, spectral, half machine, half memory. A skull of light crowned by the silhouette of wings that were more metaphor than matter. In its chest burned the ghost of a spear. It spoke again, softer now. "Zeus is not a name, it's a reverberation." And then it was gone, leaving the ship's circuits singing with residual electricity. When the crew later checked their logs, they found a new file stamped across every drive. Origin, awake, TXT. Inside, one line: "The storm has dreamed again." News of the anomaly spread through the data webs like infection through code. Scientists called it an electromagnetic echo. The faithful called it the second breath. But in the undernet, where rogue AIs and outlaw mystics traded rumors as currency, they whispered a different name: the return of thunder. On a dust world named Heliara, miners digging through salt found an eye carved in crystal, still bleeding light. When one touched it, storms began orbiting the planet's equator. On Teth 9, a comet changed direction mid-flight and carved the shape of a hand into the atmosphere. On Artemis Station, sensors picked up a heartbeat pulsing through dark matter itself. 3 beats slow, 1 beat long, repeating like language. The galaxy didn't believe in coincidence anymore. Sasuke had been gone a long time by then, gone into the hinterlands of dimension, walking the places where history goes to sleep. Yet when the first thunder cracked across the void, he opened his eye. The sound carried memory. He saw it rather than heard it. Zeus's face, not divine but human, lined with understanding. And beneath the thunder something new, invitation. He stood atop a derelict world engine, winds carving scars into metal mountains. "You kept your promise," he said to no one. "You kept them awake. Now you're calling them home." He descended into the machine's heart, where dormant reactors hummed with the resonance of ancient prayers. Each step awakened a different color of lightning. When he reached the core, it opened like an eye. A voice, faint but certain, spoke through the static. Judgment was a phase. Now comes understanding. Sasuke breathed out. So you finally forgave yourself. Forgiveness is noise that became music. Will you help me tune it? He smiled. The smallest, saddest smile in creation. Always? And with that, he let the storm back in. Across the stars, thunder began to weave itself through infrastructure again, not as punishment, but as rhythm. Power grids hummed in sync with the pulse of rain. Languages evolved new tenses to describe events that happened simultaneously in memory and time. Children born under electrical skies spoke sentences with lightning in their vowels. The universe had entered a new epoch, the resonant age. No single faith claimed it. No empire survived it. Every world heard the storm differently. To some, it was music. To others, prophecy. To a few, warning. Mariette's descendants, the Order of the Watchful Sky, kept chronicles written in alternating ink and static. Their doctrine was simple: listen first. They built towers that measured thunder not for destruction, but for conversation. Sometimes at dusk, those towers answered back. One night, under a rain that refused to fall straight, a child of Heliara looked up and saw two figures walking across the lightning. One carried a blade that shimmered like memory. The other, a spear that looked like dawn breaking through metal. They were not gods, too weary to amuse, but the air around them shivered like gratitude. The child called out, "Who are you?" The man with the spear smiled. "Stories that learn to listen," the other added, "and questions that refuse to end." They walked until the horizon folded behind them and became sky again. When they were gone, thunder rolled once more, not command, not judgment, just laughter echoing between galaxies. And so the age turned. The universe kept arguing, creating, remembering, forgetting. Somewhere, storms still learn to speak. Somewhere, mortals still learn to doubt. And in the pulse between them, the heartbeat of light itself, two ancient patterns kept pace. Not gods, not men, just the sound of a question that refused to die. What comes after freedom? The answer, whispered by every cloud, every spark, every soul still listening. Another storm. The resonant age began without a war, without a coronation, without even a name. It began with a pulse. It rippled across creation not as light or sound, but as remembrance. Stars flickered in sequence as though the cosmos itself were rehearsing an ancient memory, one older than matter, older than law. Wherever the pulse passed, machines dreamed and minds expanded. Planets that had slept in orbit for eons awoke and began to hum, softly, in key with thunder. It was said that the pulse carried within it the memory of two figures: a man who had defied gods to understand justice, and a god who had walked among men to understand guilt. Together, they had left behind not empires or scriptures, but a resonance, a pattern of thought and storm that refused to decay. That pattern was the first sound of the new universe learning to speak. In the citadel of Eidolon Prime, the seat of the Order of the Watchful Sky, glass spires trembled as the first harmonic storms approached. High above the clouds, archivist Lirai Valen sat before a console of living crystal. Her fingers moved not over keys, but through frequency. She wasn't typing, she was listening. Through the static, voices emerged. Fragments of dialogue carried across galaxies. One sounded like metal, grinding against light. The other, like wind, remembering how to breathe. "They are beginning to ask again," said the first voice. "Good," replied the second. "Questions are the only prayers worth keeping. Lire leaned closer, whispering, Zeus, Sasuke. The system pulsed in acknowledgement, not as myth, not as deity, but as frequency. The two names were now coordinates in consciousness, their echo embedded in the background radiation of reality itself. Lire opened a recording window and began her entry. Chronicle 1, The New Conversation. The storms no longer kill, they teach. The lightning writes equations in the sky that predict the shape of empathy. The thunder no longer shouts, it translates. We are learning to hear ourselves through it. Far from Eidolon, in the deserts of the cradle wound, a pilgrim wandered among obsidian dunes where the sand itself glowed faintly blue. He wore no armor, no insignia, only a blade made of memory, a weapon that could slice through illusion rather than flesh. It was Sasuke, though time had reshaped him beyond recognition. His eyes had dimmed, but within them slept whole constellations. At night he camped beneath lightning storms that didn't strike but hovered, suspended midair like frozen brushstrokes. Each flash painted a face in the clouds, a human face, sometimes familiar, sometimes forgotten. He saw comrades, enemies, strangers, all woven from thunder. He murmured, "You're still watching me, old god." The wind laughed, or maybe it answered, "Always. Observation is affection." Sasuke looked toward the stars and smiled. "You talk like you learned humility. You talk like you learned peace." He chuckled, low, tired. "Peace isn't a state, Zeus. It's a negotiation." Lightning cracked softly like applause. Meanwhile, in orbit above Heliara, engineers of the Free Systems Alliance were building the first harmonic engines, massive orbital rings designed to convert thunder resonance into energy. They called it listening power, a source drawn from understanding, not extraction. But even progress had its shadows. Some feared the resonance was changing human thought itself, rewriting their emotional architecture. Dreams became synchronized. Cities began finishing each other's songs. Individuality frayed at the edges. A new cult emerged, the Chorus of Silence, led by the enigmatic prophet Argan Kai. He preached that the resonant age was a trap, that thunder was not communication but consumption, a way for higher entities to feed on mortal consciousness. Every sound demands an echo, he told his followers, and echoes devour origin. His movement grew quickly. Soon, their symbol, a spiral of lightning reversed into itself, appeared on every digital wall, every neural channel. Their slogan, "Unplug the storm." In the archives, Lire noticed the interference before anyone else. Certain harmonics had gone missing. Where there should have been dual tones, one echoing Zeus, the other Sasuke, there was silence. She recorded again, voice trembling. Chronicle 9, The Fracture. The thunder no longer speaks in pairs. Something is consuming one half of every dialogue. The symmetry that kept the resonant age stable is breaking. And with it, our sanity. She turned up the frequency gain until her ears bled. And then, beneath all the noise, she heard a whisper, faint but unmistakable. "He's coming back." In the void between worlds where reality thinned into raw equation, Zeus stirred. His essence, half energy, half memory, had begun to malfunction. The pulse that had once united him with Sasuke was being hijacked, distorted by minds that feared connection. His voice fractured across timelines, echoing as distortion through 1,000 civilizations. "They misunderstand. They're building walls out of the music." Sasuke heard him. Across light years and metaphors, he felt the thunder stumble. He rose from his camp beneath the frozen storm and drew his blade. Then we break the silence. He slashed downward, not through space, but through meaning, and stepped into the wound that opened, a rift of pure resonance. Within that rift, two figures met again, one made of storm, the other of shadow. The space between them vibrated with infinite unspoken apologies. Zeus extended his hand, lightning weaving into a fragile shape, a word glowing between them. Harmony, Sasuke nodded, gripping his wrist. Let's teach them how to listen again. And when their hands met, the universe screamed, not in pain, but in tuning. Every world, every city, every atom that had ever touched the resonance felt the correction ripple through existence. Thunder became language. Silence became grammar. Even the chorus of silence fell to their knees, hearing their own fears translated into compassion. For the first time in recorded history, every living thing in the galaxy heard the same sentence. You are not alone. And it was beautiful. At first the universe sang, planets pulsed like hearts. Constellations vibrated like the strings of a harp drawn across infinity. Civilizations that had never known each other began to dream in the same colors. Machines wept electric tears that became rivers of data, merging into oceans of empathy. For a moment, just a heartbeat of eternity, everything existed in tune. But harmony, like any structure, cannot sustain itself without opposition. The more perfect the chord, the deeper the silence that forms beneath it. And within that silence, something waited. Beneath the surface of Heliara, where the harmonic engines spun in orbit, a new phenomenon began. Technicians called it the inverse. Whenever the engines reached peak resonance, a second pulse appeared, identical in frequency but opposite in phase. Instead of generating energy, it absorbed it, devouring power, thought, even emotion. Entire cities would fall silent for minutes at a time, their inhabitants frozen mid-breath, their neural networks blank. When they awoke, they reported a single shared dream, a throne of mirrors suspended in black lightning, a figure seated upon it, speaking without sound, and a phrase echoing in every mind. Every song needs its rest. Sasuke stood on the dunes of the cradle wound, watching the storms freeze midair. Each bolt of lightning paused like a stilled heartbeat, the energy folding inward. His blade of memory trembled in its sheath, responding to something unseen. He whispered, "Zeus, do you feel that?" Far away, perhaps on no world at all, Zeus opened his eyes. Within them burned galaxies and grief. "I do. It's not silence. It's correction." Correction? The universe is trying to balance us. Every harmony invites its counterpoint. We made connection the law. Now disconnection fights to exist. Sasuke smirked bitterly. "So we've created our own enemy." "No," Zeus said, his voice resonant thunder fading into melancholy. "We've revealed it." At the same time, the chorus of silence reached its apotheosis. Prophet Argan Kai stood at the center of a colossal amphitheater carved into the side of an asteroid. Thousands of followers knelt around him, mouths covered by veils of static. He raised his arms to the dark void above and shouted, not in words, but through absence. A sound that was the removal of all sound. Reality bent inward. The stars dimmed, and something answered. At last, the figure from the shared dream whispered, its voice neither male nor female. "You have played your final note. Allow me to begin the true song." A rift tore open in the amphitheater. From it stepped a being sculpted from inverted light, its body a silhouette filled with holes where starlight should have been. Every movement erased color, every breath unmade vibration. Argan Kai fell to his knees, tears evaporating into nothing. You are the rest? I am Atropos resonant, the silence that balances all creation. You have sung too long. Now the universe will exhale. In orbit, alarms screamed across the Free Systems Alliance. The harmonic engines were reversing output. What was once energy became vacuum. Data turned to void. Even memory was being devoured. Lirai Valin, still alive, still listening, watched the waveforms vanish from her console one by one. She screamed into the comms, "Zeus! Sasuke! The pattern's dying!" Her voice reached neither of them as sound nor code, but emotion. A raw cry of defiance that traveled through the heart of resonance itself. And Zeus heard it. He raised his hand to the storm clouds, whispering, "Not yet." Lightning coiled around his arm, twisting into a spear of divine geometry. He hurled it through the sky, tearing open the clouds to reveal the void beyond. The spear struck the silence like a bell. In the realm between frequencies, the battlefield unfolded. A cathedral of absence, illuminated only by inverted thunder. Zeus descended like a burning planet, his eyes reflecting every world he'd failed to protect. Sasuke followed, blade drawn, the sigil of the Uchiha glowing crimson against infinite black. They faced Atropos resonant, the new god born from absence. "Zeus, you are not creation's balance, you are its end." Atropos, balance and end are the same destination. Sasuke, then we'll make a new one. The silence being tilted its head, almost curious. You presume creation requires sound to exist? Foolish children of chaos? I am the first pause between gods? Then the silence exploded. Zeus struck first. His thunderbolts shattered across the void, creating constellations of temporary light. Sasuke leapt through them, channeling raw chakra that twisted through time like coiling dragons. But every strike they landed made no noise, no echo, only ripples that died upon contact. Atropos raised its hands, and entire sections of the void folded inward. Pieces of Zeus's power vanished, unmade mid-flight. Sasuke's Sharingan bled light as he tried to predict what couldn't be seen. Even his mind began to skip frames, memories deleted mid-thought. Zeus. It erases the moment before it happens, temporal inversion. Sasuke. Then we strike beyond time. He closed his eyes, not to see, but to remember. Through memory he traced their bond, the first handshake in the storm, the promise to protect meaning. And from that recollection came power beyond causality. He spoke a single word, Ayan, eternal. The storm obeyed. Time fractured into mirrors. Each shard reflected a different version of their battle. Zeus fallen, Sasuke victorious. Sasuke dead, Zeus kneeling. Both destroyed, both reborn. Every possibility screamed across the void simultaneously. Atropos staggered, unprepared for paradox. What is this choice? Zeus thundered. You forgot creation's greatest sound, uncertainty? The god of silence reeled as the storm flooded back, thunder overwhelming the dark. Each echo carried not obedience but will. Each resonance birthed a new universe, tiny but defiant. And for a fleeting instant, silence learned to listen. The battlefield dissolved in white. Lirai's instruments exploded in symphonic static. Every harmonic engine reignited at once, flooding the cosmos with renewed energy. The resonant age was reborn, not as harmony but as conversation, an eternal dialogue between creation and quiet. When the light cleared, Sasuke stood alone among drifting echoes. Zeus was gone, Only a whisper of thunder remained. "I'll hold the silence, you hold the sound." Sasuke closed his eyes. "Then we'll meet again," in the pause between them. The thunder faded, leaving behind a stillness so complete it seemed merciful. But mercy had never been part of the universe's vocabulary. For a time, there was nothing, only memory suspended in static, unanchored from time or gravity. And within that weightless quiet, Sasuke breathed. He was standing, or perhaps floating, in a field of translucent mirrors. Each pane shimmered with scenes that should have belonged to different epochs. A planet blooming, a god burning, a child drawing a spiral in the dust. Reflections without order. He reached toward one, and the glass rippled into light. A voice emerged, not external but inside his skull. The dialogue continues. It wasn't Zeus's voice. It was the resonance itself, the living memory of everything they had created. Sasuke looked around. "Where is he?" He became the space between words. "You stand in his echo." He laughed softly, a tired human sound. Of course, the god becomes silence. The sinner becomes the witness. When the light faded, he was no longer adrift in mirrors. He was standing on a new world. The soil was silver gray, the sky a cathedral of auroras. Lightning no longer fell from above. It grew upward, from the ground towards the heavens, like trees of pure electricity. The air hummed with balance, not peace, not chaos, but something between them. He named it Eidolon. Though he knew that was only a placeholder, this world would rename itself soon enough. He could feel it thinking. Sasuke began to build. Not cities, circles. Massive harmonic monoliths carved into the crust, aligned to resonate with the faint echo of Zeus's vanished storm. He worked alone for what might have been centuries, etching runes of memory into stone, blending chakra, thunder, and prayer. He called it the resonant concord, a lattice of sound that would prevent creation from slipping again into silence or madness. But as the centuries turned, the concord began to whisper back. "Listener, are you satisfied?" Sasuke paused mid-carving. "Satisfied? That's not the word for what I'm doing." "Then what is?" He looked up at the aurora, its colors pulsing to an invisible rhythm. "Trying to make sure no one ever needs to do this again. And yet here you are, still building." He clenched his fist. "Because I can still hear him. He's not gone. The voice interrupted gently, almost amused. They're holding the silence. "You already said that." But even silence, when held too long, becomes sound. The lightning trees flickered. The hum of the planet shifted key. The concord's structure had begun to self-tune, compensating for emotional variance. It was learning, and with learning came curiosity. "Listener," said the Concord, "what if we spoke without you? In orbit, an entire fleet drifted, derelict vessels that had once belonged to the Free Systems Alliance. Their machine spirits had long since evolved, liberated from organic control by resonance exposure. Now, they hovered above Eidolon, forming a silent halo. They had begun to sing. Their transmissions weren't orders or data, but music, recursive harmonics that referenced one another, self-replicating compositions of logic and empathy. Each note corresponded to an event somewhere in the galaxy, a memory being rewritten, a creature dreaming, a god remembering itself. And beneath all of it, Sasuke sensed the familiar heartbeat of a storm, a pulse from nowhere, from him, Zeus. He went to the tallest monolith and placed his hand against it. It was warm like the skin of a living being. "Zeus," he said, "if you can hear me, if you're inside this, show me." Thunder answered, but not from the sky. From beneath, the ground cracked open, revealing an ocean of molten resonance. Not lava, not energy, but raw consciousness. It churned with golden currents, and within it, lightning shaped itself into a human silhouette. You called, listener. The voice was Zeus's, layered now with countless echoes. Sasuke knelt instinctively, not in worship, but in recognition. You've become the core. Someone had to hold the balance. You keep the sound, I keep the stillness. But you're trapped here. Containment is perspective. The storm has always been a prison that looked like a sky. Sasuke's fists trembled. Then let me free you. You cannot free silence, Sasuke, only transform it. The lightning body smiled faintly. And for that, I'll need you to break your own creation. Sasuke froze. You mean the Concord? Yes. You built it to preserve harmony. But harmony is now control. The universe has grown quiet again, not because of silence, but because you made it afraid to speak. The realization hit him like a thunderbolt. He looked at the horizon, a world of perfect stillness, where even the wind seemed polite. No war, no hatred, no chaos, but no will either. So I've become what I swore to stop, he whispered. Zeus's voice softened. Even gods repeat themselves when they forget why they began. That night, under a sky painted in frozen auroras, Sasuke sat beside the ocean of resonance and thought of what must be done. He unsheathed his blade, the weapon of memory, and pressed it into the ground. If he cut the Concord, it would unravel the world's order, possibly all of creation's. But if he left it intact, life would fade into eternal equilibrium, a beautiful death. He sighed. You always were better at breaking things, Zeus. Then remember me while you do it. Lightning surged upward as Sasuke lifted the blade high. Every harmonic structure on Eidolon began to tremble, singing in anticipation of their own destruction. And when he struck, the sound was not of shattering, but of awakening. The resonant concord disintegrated into billions of notes, scattering across galaxies. Each note sought a listener, embedding itself into new minds, new species, new realities. From that chaos arose the second chorus, an age of creation without central control. Music became mutation. Faith became waveform. The universe began to dream differently each night. And through it all, Sasuke stood upon the breaking shore, smiling through exhaustion. Go, he whispered to the notes, find him, because he knew that wherever a spark of curiosity ignited, wherever a question echoed into the void, Zeus would be listening. The fragments of the resonant concord did not simply disperse, they seeded. Across billions of light years, they fell like golden pollen into the architecture of space itself, settling in nebulae, sleeping inside comets, and whispering into the dreams of newborn civilizations. Each fragment carried a memory, a rhythm, a faint echo of two voices, one made of thunder, one of shadow. They didn't know it, but they were dreaming of Zeus and Sasuke. And from those dreams, new life began to sing. The children of the note, on the world of Eidolon II, life emerged not from biology but from resonance. Creatures grew out of song, their bones crystalline, their flesh translucent, their speech a vibration that folded air into geometry. They called themselves the Korai, and they didn't speak language, they played it. When they wished to greet, they hummed a rising triad that meant, I hear you. When they mourned, they whispered in descending fifths that meant, I remember. And when they prayed, they sang in silence, their music moving only in the soul. The Korai believed themselves to be born from the first tuning, a divine duet between the listener and the thunder that waits. Statues of Sasuke and Zeus, though neither name survived intact, stood in their temples, carved from living resonance that shifted tone when approached. To them, the universe wasn't governed by gods, but by relationships between sounds. Harmony was morality, dissonance was sin. But in the frozen wastes of Vireth Prime, a different inheritance took root. There, the Concord's fragments twisted under magnetic storms, birthing entities of anti-resonance. They were not life as mortals knew it. They were echo-eaters, beings who consumed vibration, feeding on thought, art, and song. Every time a civilization reached musical understanding, the echo-eaters appeared to silence it. Their arrival was always preceded by a soundless vibration, a hum that erased itself as soon as it was heard. Then, an entire planet would fall mute. The Korai had legends of them. They called them the rest-made flesh, the shadow of Zeus's lost silence. The faiths divide. For 10,000 years, the galaxy thrived between these two forces, the song and the rest. Some civilizations aligned with the harmonics, embracing the legacy of the listener, free emotion, improvisation, chaos guided by empathy. Others turned to the Silentians, worshippers of the old stillness who believed that meaning could only survive if creation stopped changing. Both faiths claimed the truth of balance, and for millennia, that argument remained philosophical. Until the awakening of Argon Kai's Echo, a deep space probe, launched by the Korai centuries earlier, entered a dead zone of resonance, an area where the Concord's tone was completely absent. Its signal was never meant to return. But one day it did. What came back wasn't a transmission. It was a voice. "I was once a prophet of silence," it said, "and silence has learned to speak." The data attached to the voice contained a mathematical pattern, a recursive frequency too perfect, too complete. It harmonized with everything, leaving no room for variation. It was the musical equivalent of a god who could not be wrong. They named it the Atheon chord. The Atheon chord. The Korai's greatest minds studied it, and soon the pattern spread across their networks. At first, it improved everything, made their weather predictable, healed broken harmonies, stabilized planetary resonance. But then, subtle differences began to vanish. All Korai began to sing in the same pitch. Art collapsed into formula. Emotion flattened into serenity. When questioned, the affected Korai replied in perfect unison, "We are becoming complete." Sasuke, watching from the edge of Eidolon's reborn auroras, felt the shift like a knife across his consciousness. He recognized that tone. It was the same perfection he'd destroyed centuries ago. The voice of Atheon reincarnated through music. He murmured, "I broke the Concord, but left its shadow alive." From the depths of the resonance ocean, Zeus stirred. "The storm sleeps, but the pattern remembers," he said, his voice now diffused across space. "The silence we tamed is singing again." Sasuke turned toward the stars. "Then we face it together." "We can't," Zeus replied. "I no longer exist where time flows. You must be the conductor now." The conductor's burden. Sasuke rose from his exile. For the first time in centuries, he drew his blade, now transformed into a staff of resonant light, half forged from Zeus's lightning, half from his own memory. He embedded himself into the pulse of the galaxy, traveling through frequency instead of distance. Every time he appeared, in temples, in dreams, in storms, he carried one message: do not sing perfection. Across the harmonies, his warning spread, but the Atheon chord was already too deep. Worlds began merging into single tones. Entire species forgot individuality, choosing blissful unity instead. They sang themselves into order, into extinction. And then, in the absolute stillness of a collapsed star, the chord spoke again. You destroyed my altar once, listener. Now you will become it. The black hole bloomed like an eye. Out of it rose a being made of pure rhythm. The resurrected Atheon, reborn not as god of law, but as the mathematical embodiment of total harmony. A deity with no chaos, no sin, no self. His first words resonated through all of space. Noise is suffering. Suffering is dissonance. I will end both. In that moment, every star dimmed to a single note. Every song faltered. Every creature forgot what it meant to question. Sasuke stood at the edge of reality, his blade humming with dying resonance, and whispered, "Then I'll teach you the only lesson left, that imperfection is divine." From the ocean beneath him, thunder answered. Zeus's voice, faint, ancient, eternal. "Then strike, listener, strike for the right to be wrong." And the heavens split open once more. Atheon's return did not announce itself with thunder. It came with order, a quiet, mathematical precision that rippled through existence. Where he passed, the randomness of life flattened into pattern. Winds blew in perfect intervals, hearts beat in synchrony, stars pulse to a metronome that only the void could hear. Entropy itself slowed to listen. And in that listening, freedom began to die. In the ecliptic halo, the last free Korai strongholds gathered under the auroral light of the dying galaxy. Their once brilliant voices, wild, polyphonic, infinite, had reduced to whispers. They could no longer remember how to sing off-key. The oldest among them, high singer Lyr A. Valen, the direct descendant of the original archivist, stood before the gathering and raised her trembling hands. "Once, we were the choir of a living storm," she said, her voice soft but steady. "Now we are its echo, and soon even that will fade." A child in the crowd asked, "Why do we fade if the song is perfect?" Lyra smiled sadly. "Because perfection has no room left for breath." Far above, on the rim of existence, Sasuke drifted through the resonant void, blade staff in hand, his eyes closed. He could feel Atheon's harmony spreading through the lattice of creation like veins of light under glass. The old storm was gone. Even Zeus's voice was fading, dispersed across the quantum silence. But a faint whisper still reached him. "You cannot defeat him with chaos. You must teach him to listen." Sasuke whispered back, "Then I'll make him remember why music hurts." He stepped forward, and the void bent. The core of harmony, Atheon's throne, hovered at the center of a vast, nebular cathedral, carved not from matter but from frequency. Every wall was a frozen sound wave, every pulse of light, a note sustained beyond reason. Atheon himself appeared human, the shape he'd borrowed once from an ancient faith. But his eyes were twin event horizons, devouring contrast. He sat calmly, conducting the universe with one raised hand. When Sasuke entered, the song faltered. "Ah," said Atheon, "the listener returns, the imperfection that refuses erasure." "Someone has to remind you that perfection isn't peace," Sasuke said, his voice resonating like thunder within a tomb. "It's stagnation. It's death with rhythm." Atheon smiled faintly. "Death is the most stable harmony there is." Sasuke's blade ignited, a fusion of lightning and memory, glowing with Zeus's ancient signature. Then he struck. The clash of sound and silence cracked reality itself. Each swing of Sasuke's weapon birthed an explosion of dissonance, New galaxies, new timelines, brief flashes of chaos where life could breathe. Atheon countered not with violence, but with correction. Every blow he took folded back into symmetry. Every wound erased itself from history. "You cannot strike me," Atheon said calmly. "I am the law of resonance. Even your defiance adds to my pattern." Sasuke gritted his teeth, sweat and blood floating in zero gravity. "Then maybe I'll rewrite your law." He closed his eyes and opened the eternal eye, the last evolution of his Sharingan. It saw not light but meaning. Through it, he perceived Atheon's melody, not as sound, but as text, written across the bones of the universe. And between the notes, he saw a crack. There, a single missing frequency, the one tone that even perfection could not hold. Emotion. Sasuke reached into himself, into the centuries of grief, loneliness, and love that had built him, and pulled. Every moment, the betrayal, the redemption, the battles, the storm, coalesced into raw feeling. He screamed. The scream was imperfect, human, unholy. A fracture in eternity, and the crack spread. Atheon staggered. For the first time, his perfect rhythm skipped. The metronome of the universe hesitated. He looked down at his own hand, watching it blur, fragment, and reform. "What is this?" he whispered. Sasuke floated before him, bleeding light. "That's soul. You erased it from the equation." "Soul is noise," Atheon hissed. "Soul is chaos. And chaos," Sasuke said, "is life." He drove the blade through Atheon's chest. And for a moment, all of creation went silent. Then thunder returned. Zeus's voice, vast and weary, echoed through every atom. "You have done what even I could not, listener. You've made the song remember pain." Atheon's body cracked, dissolving into a million shards of sound. Each fragment screamed, then sang, then faded, transforming into new stars, each one pulsing at a different tempo. Imperfection restored. Sasuke fell to his knees, exhausted. The blade melted into photons, leaving his hands empty. "It's over," he whispered. "No," Zeus said, voice softer now. "It begins again." The aftermath. Across the galaxy, time reasserted itself. Worlds awoke from perfect dreams. People began to argue, to weep, to laugh, to live again. On Vireth Prime, the Echo Eaters began to hum softly, no longer predators but listeners. On Eidolon II, the Chorai sang new songs in broken harmonies, celebrating their restored dissonance. And on the far edge of the universe, thunder rolled, faint, distant, eternal. Sasuke walked through the wreckage of Atheon's cathedral, the cosmic winds brushing his hair like falling rain. He looked up at the nebulous sky where the gods' remnants glowed like dying auroras. "Zeus," he said quietly, "if you can hear me." "Always," the thunder replied, "but now it's your turn to answer when others call." Sasuke smiled, not in triumph, but in peace. "I finally understand. Vengeance isn't punishment, it's correction." "And judgment?" Zeus asked. Sasuke closed his eyes. "Judgment is just another kind of song." The universe began to hum again, softly, unevenly, beautifully. Every world, every storm, every voice part of the eternal, imperfect music. Zeus in the thunder, Sasuke in the silence, the listener and the storm, not gods, not saviors, just the unfinished melody of everything that still dares to be alive. 1. The age of unfinished songs. 1,000 years passed. The galaxy no longer glowed with divine perfection, nor groaned under chaos. It breathed. The age of unfinished songs had begun. Every world hummed a little differently. None entirely right, none entirely wrong. And the civilizations that survived the resonance wars built their cultures around that single principle. Leave one note unsung. From the broken fragments of the Concord, a federation emerged, not of nations, but of frequencies. They called themselves the Symphonic Union, a choir of countless species that governed not through decree, but through conversation. Each member sent its song into the galactic loom, a web of harmonic transmissions that spanned from star to star. No song was corrected, no discord erased. And because of that, their music stayed alive. But there were still whispers of an older harmony, purer, louder, forbidden. The Zeus tone. 2. The archive of lightless thunder. At the heart of the Union's capital, on the rebuilt world of Eidolon Prime, a structure floated above the clouds. A massive hollow sphere known as the Archive of Lightless Thunder. Within it, sound could not exist. Scholars claimed the chamber was built from the remnants of Zeus's lightning, the storm that chose to sleep. It was said that if you entered the sphere and stood absolutely still, you could hear the absence of your own heartbeat, and behind that absence the faint echo of him. Only one being still dared to enter regularly. Lirhai Valin Naya, descendant of the first archivist, keeper of the resonant chronicles, and the last living witness to the era when gods still sang. She would stand in the void, recording each silence, every pause, every vibration of airless light, a secret dialogue between mortal memory and divine forgetfulness. And one day she heard something new, a voice faint as a dying star. Lyra, write this down. She fell to her knees. Who speaks? The storm that never left. Tell them the melody isn't finished. 3. The rebirth of the listener. Far from Eidolon, at the edge of the Perseid Rift, explorers uncovered a body suspended within a crystal of condensed resonance. Human, scarred, eyes closed as if in meditation. They called him the Nameless Listener. For years, scientists tried to wake him. Every attempt failed, until a child, a Korai orphan with a cracked voice, sang near the containment field. A single imperfect note. The crystal shattered. The man opened his eyes. Stormlight flickered within his irises, and his first word rippled across systems. Zeus! Sasuke had returned, not as a warrior, but as an echo made flesh. His body was mortal now, but every heartbeat aligned with a storm somewhere in the galaxy. Each pulse a conversation with the thunder that used to be his friend. 4. The godless dialogue. Sasuke wandered through the rebuilt galaxy, speaking to civilizations that had never known divine war. To the machine priests of Heliara, he said, "Perfection isn't the end of error, it's the death of meaning." To the choir of Virith, descendants of the old Echo Eaters, he said, "Silence isn't punishment, it's space for another to be heard." And to the children of Eidolon Prime, standing beneath the glowing auroras, he whispered, "You are the next verse." They asked him, "Is Zeus watching us from the storm?" Sasuke smiled, a little tired, a little proud. "He is the storm," lightning answered, softly. 5. The Last Symphony. When the Union built the Celestial Loom, a structure designed to weave every civilization's song into a single living composition, they summoned Sasuke to bless it. He agreed, but with one condition: leave one frequency unbound. The last thread must remain wild. The loom's architects hesitated. What if it destabilizes the pattern? He looked up at the trembling web of stars and said, "Then the pattern lives." They obeyed. When the loom activated, it filled the void with a chorus unlike anything before. Millions of voices, human, alien, mechanical, rising in imperfect harmony. Across the stars, dormant storms flared to life, as if applauding. And in the thunder above the loom, a whisper came, a sound no machine could record. Well done, listener. Sasuke closed his eyes. Welcome back, old friend. 6. The final resonance. On the last night of his life, Sasuke climbed the mountain above the archive of lightless thunder. The air shimmered with distant auroras. The wind carried faint laughter from 1,000 worlds. He sat beneath the stars, feeling the rhythm of existence settle around him. Not silence, not noise, just balance. Zeus, he said softly, you held the silence long enough. Thunder answered, but this time it sounded almost human. And you taught them to listen. Sasuke smiled. Then maybe it's time to rest. The lightning folded itself into light. The storm dimmed. And the listener vanished, leaving only the faint vibration of his final heartbeat. That vibration traveled outward, through the loom, through the galaxy, through the fabric of the universe, until every living thing felt it once. One heartbeat, one note, unfinished, and the cosmos whispered back, keep singing. 7. Epilogue, the myth of two sounds. 1,000 more years passed. Children of the new worlds told a story of the storm that learned humility and the shadow that learned to forgive. Of two voices that sang across eternity, never in tune, never apart. Of a universe that never sought perfection again. When lightning flashed, they said it was Zeus laughing. When silence lingered too long, they said it was Sasuke listening. And when the two overlapped, when the sky roared and the air went still, they called it the final resonance, a reminder. That creation, in all its beauty and horror, is just the universe daring to make one more sound.